Guess who's back? Back again. Brother Run. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? Just guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Black. It's Brother Ron in the black hat. This is We All Be. News Free Dixie for the 21st century. This is Brother Ron. Ain't no worries. I know what y'all heard. The rumors of my demise are just that rumors. Look at all these rumors. Look at all these rumors. Thank you, family, for tuning in. This is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. That's right, boys and girls, scholars and laymen, the wokish and the sleepish. Tis I, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2, the artist. Got a lot to talk about today. We're waiting on Judge to come through, but I can hold my own for anybody. I don't need nobody to share the microphone. I can rock it myself. There's a lot to talk about. Thank you all for tuning in and tuning in to turn out because you got to get out of tune to get in tune. You got to get out of tune to get in tune. You see how it works? It's a lot to talk about. Hey, brother, Real Black, Mr. Million Plus subscribers, brother Mike over there. Y'all know about Real Black. He's a living legend, doing what it do, giving, spreading the good news to the people. Thank you all. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, yes. Spread the love. What's up? How everybody doing? Roll call. It's the roll call. It's roll call. All right. Yeah, my city been going through it. Pray for my city, but pray for your city. Pray for everybody. Everybody can use some extra love, some patience, some lovability right now. As y'all may know, we had lost a Memphis legend, a true Memphis legend, a giant, brother Young Dolph, Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., also known as Young Dolph, drew his last breath doing what he loved the most, supporting his people. And I'm just, it's been very numb. I had a chance to go by his martyr site, his crucifixion site. It's funny, I go by that place a lot throughout the week on Airways and Ketchum. I passed through there. My people from that area, Young Dolph, he rocked Castalia hard. He was like what Nipsey was to Crenshaw. If Nipsey was the line of Crenshaw, Young Dolph was definitely the line of Castalia, the line of South Memphis. He represented South Memphis to the fullest. He was very much loved in South Memphis and Castalia and all the places over there. And people trip me out. People take Little Boosie, excuse me. And I like Little Boosie. I've been liking him for a long time. But they really take what he said out of context. On Vlad TV, they keep on playing that flashback clip every time a rapper died. They say, you hometown, rappers get killed in their hometown. That's not always true. People get killed any and everywhere. You can't escape death. It's like Final Destination. It's the final destination. So I don't care where you live. You got to live somewhere. You got to die somewhere. But as you, you got the beginning date and the end date. But it's that dash in the middle between the beginning and the ending is how you spend that dash that really matters in the end. And Young Dolph and death is not final. Young Dolph is just transition. And he's an ancestor. So he can do more good outside of his mortal coil. He's more effective with the other righteous ancestors. Brother had a good heart. Unfortunate. And like I tell people, don't need to jump to conclusions right now because we don't know what really happened. But I can tell you this, black folks, like people crapping on Memphis. Like if I believe all the stuff the news say about Memphis being the most dangerous or the second most dangerous or the top 10 most dangerous city, I would be afraid to leave my house, my home. I'll be afraid of my own shadow. Memphis is a great place. There's a reason why there are more recorded songs about Memphis than any other place in America. There's no other place in America that got the music history or the mythology of a Memphis. Memphis is a very unique place. a very powerful place. But the people here don't know that. You know, it's like if you blame Memphis for killing Dr. King. Memphis did not kill Dr. King. Dr. King was killed in Memphis, but Memphis did not kill Dr. King. It's been like December 8th will be the anniversary. You know, December 8th, 1999, in a U.S. civil court in Memphis, elements of the U.S. government was found complicit in the murder, the assassination, the state-sponsored assassination of Dr. King. Like Dr. King used to say, the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet is my own government. The greatest purveyor of violence on the planet is my own government. It's the chicken coming home to roost. The chickens are coming home to roost. November 22nd, 58th anniversary of the state-sponsored assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Y'all keep on talking about, yo, Dolph didn't have no protection. Look, JFK had Secret Service. Malcolm X had bodyguards. Malcolm X, you know, the people that was allegedly involved in the Malcolm X assassination, wrongly convicted. Those convictions were thrown out this past Thursday. We're going to talk about that today as well. Malcolm talking about the chickens coming home to roost when Kennedy was killed. Dr. King said the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet is my own government. And y'all talking about, man, you know, that music. Nah. American History is a gangster rap album. American History is a gangster rap album. American History is a gangster rap album. Violence is the official language of our land. This land is your land. No, this gun is your gun. This land is eminent domain. But we're not going to hold you all too long. We got a special guest on here. He is no stranger to the platform. He is a true man of the people, a true people servant, but he do it his own way. Like in the words of Frank Sinatra, he did it his way. No, Frank Sinatra didn't write the song my way. I think Paul Anka wrote that song, but he embodied the spirit of doing his own way. But he do it for the people. He do it for the love. He do it for truth and justice. He do it on code. None other, the one and only, truly honorable brother, the righteous honorable Judge Joe Brown. How you doing? Judge, you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I see you cowboyed up on there. You like you the sheriff. You like you trying to run for sheriff now. You trying to clean up the town, Judge. You gotta be the sheriff of Memphis. Like the Wild Wild West out here.
Actually, need to go on safari.
You know, so far, big game hunting, right, Judge? You got some big
Take
game to hunt.
enough gun.
Yes, sir. We gotta. You the man. I definitely want to talk to you because I think it's very important because we know, unless you've been in a coma, what
Oh
happened this
yeah.
past
No, I
week.
finished that up. It was difficulty. They wanted to switch to this riff stuff, and all riff was a whole lot of sound with a lot of the B word and a lot of the N word, and a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of manifested dysfunction. I don't know.
Well, hey, I'm gonna get through this
Riff.
with you.
It's an app.
Oh, Riff, that's
But
the app. So you
it's
on a?
proliferating. More and more app people are trying to do hustles, and
It's
you
too
know.
many distractions, Judge. We need some people to help us focus like yourself, help us stay on code and keep our eyes on the prize. But I got you on here because you called it actually early about the Kyle Rittenhouse. You was right on point
Yeah,
about
I know
Kyle
people
Rittenhouse
get
getting
all
off.
upset, but even Trump said it 2 years ago. He said you get out there and start rioting, and it gets live. When you've got a riot going on, you've got a mob. All that stuff about deadly force goes out the window. You can go immediately to deadly force because even the strongest man can be ripped to shreds by a mob.
Mm-hmm.
And reactions to mob have been long established. Let's just go back 55 years ago, 54 years ago. Kent State, the National Guard, gunned down a white student mob. 5 or 6 people got killed. You got what happened when you had the mobs and riots in LA in 65 and 92, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Newark, all over the country. So I don't know why people are so ignorant of history that they think that what you see these clowns on CNN, Crying Negro Network, CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System, NBC, National Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, American Broad, et cetera. I don't know why they think that stuff is real, where they're smiling at them, and Kamala Harris is raising money to bail them out so they can get back and go do it the next day. Or what you got up in Chicago or Seattle, you got the same 180, 200 people getting arrested, bailing out, burning again, getting arrested, bailing out, and having a extended spring break where they can clown, and it's safe. It's not. So Rittenhouse was approached. The guy that survived got his bicep shot off, but when they got him to the hospital, he was armed with a firearm. So who knows what he was going to do. But when you got a mob, you don't have to wait. When they start being aggressive towards you and assaulting you, you can go immediately to use of deadly force, because there's a presumption that when a mob is after you, you are in danger of suffering death or serious bodily injury, and you may use deadly force. And black people have uh, suffered badly at the hands of mobs for a long time. So I don't know why black people are mad at the verdict. I mean, there were no black people there. And the guy that they were protesting, well, let's get real. People don't want to be real anymore. You've got a knife, you're acting crazy, and you attack somebody when the police are there with the knife, and then you go after the police. Tragically, you get paralyzed when they shoot you. And see, the police only have the same rights that citizens have. Oh, wow. Okay. Let me go back to what
I'm
I
trying to
was
black you out,
doing.
Judge. You speaking these truths.
No, what happened is I hit something and it went, and I'm listening to this. I didn't touch anything,
Right.
but what it did was go to the website for Buy the Sword, and before that, it went to the SIG website where I was shopping for some parts.
Well,
So these things pick up
technology.
what you're doing. They're AI, they're getting intelligence. So we're talking about weaponry. My iPad went to two weapon sites.
Interesting.
Interesting. You start talking about stuff and you get these ads popping up for the things you've been talking about.
So really, but there's no such thing as privacy anymore. We always
No.
being big brother's watching us everywhere. We
Yeah.
being
And
watched all the time.
for 230 years, people were trying to preserve privacy. And
Mm-hmm.
all of the little Generation Xers and all of that stuff, they want to upload everything to all 41 of their friends at the same time. And it's some picture of them in gaudy clothes at some place they really didn't need to be. So there you go. You have rights, and the fools are trying to give the rights away. Facebook has gotten almost 3/4 of the American population identifiable by their facial recognition algorithms. And
Mm.
Facebook's saying they want to cut it back, which is BS. They're not. So, it is what it is. It's tragedy. You have rights and you give them away. You have a system. The system's not perfect because it deals with people.
Right.
The legal system, the Constitution, as they are now, nothing's wrong with them. It's just like a rule book for a sport. And the outcome is determined by the plays and the players. And in order to
Mm.
play the game, you have to understand what the game is. You have to have an aptitude for playing the game.
That's right.
You got to learn the rules, and then overlaying the whole thing is human nature. And
Mm.
human nature is what it is. And at base, you have to get ready for this one truth. The game,
Yes,
the
sir.
rules, the nature of the beast is that you're dealing with the apex predator on the planet Earth, and it is the most profoundly efficient killer that Mother Nature has invented in the history of this planet.
Yes, sir.
Lions kill each other, tigers kill each other, panthers kill each other, wolves kill each other, bear kill each other, and the top predator kills itself too when there's
Mm.
wrong kind of competition. And the way we have developed, the method we have developed to prevent that from getting out of hand is called masculinity. And for the last 55 years, some damn fools have been trying to emasculate the country and the black community in particular. All of this
Mm.
violence we're seeing in Memphis is a direct result of the hood having become a matriarchy. And too many of these thugs and hood rats are just bitches with dicks.
Mm. Oh,
They're
actually, but I
effeminate.
won't get. Yeah, we
They
definitely gonna
don't
get into
have masculinity. See, let me just add this and I'll
Uh-huh.
move on. Masculinity is about dedicating yourself even to death to making where you are a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, ethics, and morality. And we don't have that. And
Mm.
masculinity can be acquired by somebody who is a grown person, but it
Yes,
works
sir.
best when you start teaching that boy as he's crawling around in the crib
Mm.
masculinity and doing it all day long, every day, 24/7, 52.
Yes,
But we
sir.
don't do that anymore because, oh my God, someone may have fluid gender and we have to accommodate them. And they, their feelings, and boys and girls should be protected from bullies. And that's the job of the parents and the teachers and the police, and they shouldn't have to put up with this. And oh my God, online bullying. Oh, that's some crap that produces a bunch of sissified punks. And then when you start telling the boys they can put on dresses and skirts and crap because, oh my God, they identify with being female, they have fluid gender, you get all kinds of garbage. See, it's about when Titanic 2 goes down, are there going to be any more men who will stand up and say, ma'am, you and your child get my seat on the lifeboat and I'll
Mm.
drown in the freezing water.
Yes, sir.
That's rough.
Mm.
Doesn't
Well, I
come
gotta
easy.
ask you, because I know you speak about Spartan mothers all the time. We need more Spartan mothers, but
Son,
will you
come back
classify
with your
Kyle
shield
Rittenhouse
on
mom as
and
a
do or
Spartan mother?
die.
Yeah, will you classify his mom, Kyle Rittenhouse mom, as a Spartan mother? Why would
I
she
don't
put a
know.
child
I haven't seen her.
in a danger
But
zone
he
like
was
that?
a young man. He wasn't an adult. He was 17. And he went there from out of state, like most of the people who were there to protest police community matter were from out of state. And he was at this auto dealership next door to an auto parts place, and they had burnt the place down. And the guy that survived, who got his bicep blown off, who was armed with a
Mm-hmm. The
firearm
medic.
himself, he had already
Mm-hmm.
set something on fire, according to the state, earlier in the day and had some outstanding warrants for domestic violence. Now, I don't know why the DA didn't do what he was supposed to do and charge that survivor with murder in the perpetration of a felony. Arson is one of the designated felonies in that state. Treason, kidnapping, rape, burglary. assault to commit murder, aggravated assault, they're triggering felonies. And the guy was committing an aggravated assault on Rittenhouse at the very least, or assault to commit murder because he was armed with a deadly weapon,
I
continuing
mean,
a felonious episode of rioting by a mob that refused to disperse. And he personally had committed an act of arson, allegedly, earlier in the day. So he should have been charged with murder in the perpetration of a felony. It's like if some people go into a liquor store to hold it up, and an employee of the liquor store or the owner or the manager or a bystander engages in the gunfight with the robbers, and some innocent person is killed, a bystander is killed, or one of the robbers killed. The murder is attributed to the people who perpetrated the underlying felony that started the mess, not the bystander and not the owner, not the employee. He took a politically correct dive, and it's detestable. The boy never should have been charged. And the judge ran a good trial, unlike what you saw in the Dr. Cosby matter, which was a farce. That fool was an embarrassment to the judicial profession. But this guy, this judge, he ran it right. He kept control of the courtroom. He got on the prosecution when they got out of line, and they did quite a few times, and he did what he was supposed to do. I had no shame at what I saw, but what I do have a shame for is the abysmal ignorance of the population that is unaware of their laws and how riots and mobs have been treated for a long time. And by the way, this matter was not white and black, and black folk didn't have a dog hunting in this other than the fall over on, hey, Rittenhouse was in the position of a whole lot of black folk when they have been confronted by mobs. And if you want to talk about, well, he came from out of state. Well, look, just because you got Al Sharptons and Jesse Jacksons and Martin Luther Kings that came out who chose to be disarmed and non-violently responsive doesn't mean they did anything that Rittenhouse did not do, or Rittenhouse did anything they didn't do, other than he had the sense to arm himself for a potentially hostile situation. Oh, these people aren't being oppressed. There are no black folk that are involved in oppression in the Rittenhouse thing. This is white people. White people got shot. White person did the shooting. White
it's white
people
on
were
white
having a
crime.
mob riot
It's
scene.
white on
White
white
people
crime,
were
Judge.
opposing it.
It's white
And
on
by
white
the
crime.
way, see, learn history. Everybody knows about the gunfight at the OK Corral.
Right.
All right. How many people know that the Earp brothers, that includes Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Doc Holliday, went on trial for murder after that? They got acquitted.
I mean, there's a reason why Wyatt Earp never took a gunshot wound.
Yeah.
He always shot first, right? You
Yeah.
know,
And see, the law
shoot first,
is
ask questions
in
later.
most, there are only 8 states that had a retreat doctrine written into their self-defense. That was up in New England. It doesn't work. The jury instructions go way around the corner to negate that. So in other words, a man's walking with his old mother or his wife or his family. Somebody comes up and does something to kill him. Under those states, he's supposed to turn around, play coward, and run, and let the bad guys get a hold of his family. But to accommodate human nature, they have stuff that they tell the jury. The defendant had a duty to retreat before he was authorized to use deadly force. However, if you find that he made any effort to retreat, such as raising one heel as though to pivot and retreat, or rocked backwards and changed his body balance as though to retreat, that suffices. But that's just crap. So
Judge,
42 out of the 50 states do not have a retreat doctrine. Tennessee doesn't formally state it in a statute, but every time I read a self-defense instruction to a jury, it included, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant had no duty to retreat. He may stand his ground. And the only reason we got that bad thing on stand your ground is because this jackass on CNN, Anderson Cooper, who was anti-gun, put it out there that the Castle Doctrine and stand your ground were why Trayvon Martin got shot by Zimmerman. Actually, the tragedy of it is this misinformation, this lying propaganda to support his anti-gun agenda is put out and believed. And you know who had the right of no retreat? It was Trayvon Martin. You know who had the benefit of stand your ground? It was Trayvon Martin, not Zimmerman. You know who did not have anything, well, there was nothing to do with Castle Doctrine because it wasn't inside a house. The Castle Doctrine came in because there are cases like, okay, there was a home invasion. The invader was armed. The homeowner on the second floor heard the break-in, got his pistol. He's standing at the top of his stairs, guarding his family. The breaker, who's armed with a gun in his hand, coming there to kill somebody. He's at the foot of the stairs. They both shoot at each other. They both miss. The guy that broke in fell and broke his leg. So he sues the homeowner. Of course, Castle Doctrine. You break into somebody's house. Oh, come off. Get off of it. People have
No, but
had
Joe, that's a good
my
question. Like,
father taught me to shoot when I was 6 years old.
but why would his
And
mom put him in that situation though, Judge? I mean, would you put
I
as a
know that,
parent,
but the point
would you put
is
your
that,
son? I'm asking you as a parent though, would you put your son if they was underage in that situation, take him to a war zone, a hot zone to play cowboy or to play deputy?
well, civic responsibility. How many people do you see in all of these black and white films of the civil rights movement? They've got their underage children there,
Yeah,
teaching them to get out on their knees and pray while some damn fool beats them across the
I can't
head
argue with
until
that,
some other
Judge.
ones feel guilty about it. What the hell is the difference?
I hear what you say, Judge. You make a great point. Well, I got to ask you this though, Judge, about the medic who got his bicep shot out. He did admit to having a gun, but he
Yeah,
said he
they
was not
found a
trying to
gun
point
on
at
him when they took him
Rittenhouse.
to the hospital.
He said he wasn't trying to point at Rittenhouse, but he did have a gun out.
He was gone. He was armed. And
But he
he's
said he was
trying
a
to
medic
grab
to
the
try to help.
man.
He
So
said he was
why
an
are you
arsonist
grabbing
allegedly.
somebody
He
who
was trying
at
to.
that point is just armed? And in that state, that's legal.
What about
Maybe
okay?
he's
But
a
Rosenbaum, the
minor,
first victim.
but he's legal. And by the way, let's take Tennessee.
Uh huh.
Tennessee says that it's illegal for a minor to possess the firearm without supervision. But even if he illegally possesses the firearm, if he is entitled to engage in defense of his life, even if he is illegally possessing, he may use the firearm.
But Judge, the first victim, Rosenbaum, he was not armed. He just had a bag of stuff. He was homeless, living with his fiance at a hotel. He just threw a bag of stuff at Cal and he shot him
And he
anyway.
should have been home. He's breaking the law.
But he's homeless, Judge. He just had he
He's
was. They say
part
he
of
was
a
homeless and
mob,
bipolar.
and he's participating in
Well, his
the
fiance said she didn't know
riotous
why he was down there. He
activity.
had mental
I
issues
know,
though.
but the point is look, if you are an ordinary, decent person
Mm-hmm.
and somebody sits upon you, it doesn't make any damn bit of difference to you whether he's crazy or he's sane. He can kill
Right.
you.
Yeah.
And he's in a mob. You don't know. The other thing is get over it. It's the law, and the law got applied, and there was no violence to justice or the law or evidence or procedure. You saw due process. That's how it's supposed to work. Just because all you have been familiar with is garbage that CNN et al. Put out there trying to get you to boost their
But
ratings.
Judge, you don't think that the white men were treated like black males are treated in the just us system? Like they
Hey,
use
I
his
have
like they say he had
many
a
people
sex with a minor,
successfully,
the Rosenbaum
brother,
character.
young brother. If you
Okay.
check around here in Memphis over the last 50 years, you'll find that attorney Joe Brown defended some people who were in a riotous situation successfully, black on
Mm,
black. Generally, it's when somebody got to acting a fool at a concert or something like that, or something that went down wrong out in the hood or at
right.
one of these parks that are now closed down, amusement parks. Uh, I've presided over such matters as a judge a time or two or three or four or five or 10, where the same situation happened. It works whether the defendant is black or white. There's a caveat. You got to have a good defense lawyer. And
Mm,
everybody that you hire to defend you is not worth a damn as a defense lawyer. Also, every judge out of the 10 trial judges, criminal trial judges you have in Shelby County, not every
mm,
one of them should be on the bench wearing a bat cape. And
mm,
the DA in Shelby County ain't worth a damn. And that's a racist somebody up there who is biased, prejudiced, and a crook, and has personally been held accountable for prosecutorial misconduct personally more than any DA's office in the United States has been held to account collectively. And guess what? Those judges are elected. That DA is elected. And we don't do a damn thing about it. The mayor, who is a jackass that we've got in right now, Strickland, nominated the first chief of police that has been nominated in 40 years because the chief of police is civil service for life of good behavior
mm,
instead of having a director who's subject to political control. The black majority city council approved somebody that got fired from Atlanta for corruption and was under investigation in North Carolina for corruption. So we did that. We elect these people that do this to us. They had a guy named Joe McCarty, Division
mm,
8 Criminal Court. He was a former Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan
mm,
in West Tennessee, chairman of this White Citizens Council. And because he paid the money to the Ford folk and got on their ballots and everybody else's sample ballots without a picture, black folk too damn lazy to pay attention to who's running for judge and checking out their records. They'd get the handout ballot and vote for him. And he
mm.
got the black bloc vote every damn time he ran. He got forced to resign because for the first time, some lawyers went through the process of being qualified for jurors. Usually that was a blanket exemption. They complained because this clown was telling 4,500 people he was qualifying for the main jury panel that if a defendant didn't take the stand, it was because he had a long criminal record and he was a guilty person. And your right to remain silent was just a technicality.
Mm.
See, that's who we elected. His replacement is Chris Kraft. And Chris Kraft is not any good thing for the black community. So you have 1, 2, 3 folk down there who try to be decent out of the 10. One of them retired a couple of 3, 4 years ago and just recently died of brain cancer. He's a white guy. He was an
Mm,
exception to the rule. And now you got some racist former prosecutors who are fairly young as judges, and they get the black bloc vote. And by the way, it's a county-wide election, and white people are only 28% of the registered voters in Shelby County, 19.1% of the registered voters in Memphis. And look what we get. So whose fault is that?
I mean, a lot
You
of us
see what
don't
I'm
know the
saying? So
game,
don't
the
complain
rules.
about
Yeah.
the system as just us. And how many fools still call me up and start at, Judge, how do I get out of jury service?
I hear what you saying, Judge, but
I
Judge,
don't want to hear it.
but Judge, the thing about as a parent, I mean, so you think Cal Rittenhouse was just innocent across the board? He did not
He was
deserve any
innocent.
charge.
Legally, he was innocent. Everything that happened was what was supposed to happen. There should the riot, the mob, sometimes civil disobedience is what it is, and there is some merit to it because people put their lives and physical safety on the line to
Yes,
protest.
sir.
When
Mm-hmm.
you're out there, you're not supposed to be safe because you're doing something against the public peace, dignity, and order, and you've been told to disperse. And as far as Rittenhouse being there as a minor, I look at the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds I've seen brought to many a demonstration by their parents. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I look at 17-year-old kids get gunned down at Kent State, Ohio State University's campus up in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good friend whose son wound up going to that university. And he got caught up in a demonstration, got arrested. I loaned the man some money to help hire a lawyer. He wasn't but 17. He was an advanced young black student. He graduated from high school at 16. Smart kid. He did what he was doing because of good reasons. But that doesn't mean there are no consequences. If you're doing something where there are no consequences possible, you haven't done anything. That's just going for a walk in the park.
I want to ask you this because you are also a former prosecutor. What would you have done as a prosecutor in that case to get something to stick? What would have been
I
your
wouldn't have
strategy?
brought it.
You wouldn't even tried
I
it.
wouldn't have brought it.
Wow. Okay.
And by the way, I always felt guilty about being a prosecutor, but I always tried to make sure there was justice. And
Well,
when
why
I
you
was
feel?
the
Yeah.
first black prosecutor for the city of Memphis,
Yes, sir.
I'd be getting ready to give somebody an offer. I'd have to go check their records, and I'd see stuff on their records where there really was racism. In other words, quote, reckless
Mm-hmm.
eyeballing by colored person.
Mm.
4 convictions. What the hell is reckless eyeballing? Colored person refusing to remove from sidewalk for passage of white person. That was a crime. So I'm looking at this, or this one, maybe they need to resurrect. Quote, acting too colored in public. And I'm
That's
looking at
deep right
this.
there, Judge. You saw that come across your desk a lot of times. Those
Yeah, and
type
I'm
of.
saying, what in the world is this crap? And I'm from L.A., I just
Mm-hmm.
gotten here. And I'm looking at
Mm-hmm.
this garbage. Acting too colored in public, you have to laugh because you got a mental image of it, but to make that a crime,
Wow. This is why we got to help. This is why we got to pick your
refusing
brain,
to
Judge.
remove from sidewalks so somebody white can go by. See, today it ain't rough. It is nice and simple and easy. What I'm looking at is the unfortunate consequences of a lot of humans living in
Mm.
crowded conditions with each other, with a circumstance in the background, which is you're trying to kill off masculinity, and you've been doing it for 50 years. So the boys don't know how to behave as men when they grow up.
Mm.
That has nothing to do with white and black. But then there is a human characteristic called xenophobia, fear or dislike of the unknown or the strange. And
Mm-hmm.
racism is but a form of xenophobia. So
Okay.
I'm looking at people act like humans in close proximity where there's no mile and a half between you and the next human on a frontier or in some agricultural area.
Mm.
Stress is a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at a lot of people whining about life not recognizing the trend for over the last 50 years to give everybody a participation ribbon. Nobody wins. Everybody protects you. You don't have to learn to develop the courage, the human bravery to bust this bully right in his mouth, even if you get your butt whipped as a result. at least he's felt the pain. He doesn't want to go through that anymore. Plus, he couldn't eat the will. Might have lost a tooth or something.
Mm.
So where are we going to man up and get it together and start talking about it's your responsibility, not the police, to keep order where you live? It's your responsibility as a man to provide for your family, not running around trying to play gold digging boy, trying to find some chick to hustle up off of. It's your responsibility to take care of those you brought here, not brag about how many outside babies you have that you don't pay a dime for and support. And by the way, let's talk about that mythology that we buy into. This
Okay.
clown we had in the White House, Barack O. Bush Bunny, got up 2007 in Chicago on a Father's Day at an arena downtown Chicago and said, "My black brothers, we ought to be ashamed of ourselves. We have to do better. We're the worst in America when it comes to handling our responsibilities and paying child support." That was a damn lie, because guess who pays their child support more regularly and on time than any other ethnic group in the United States of America? It's black men.
Mm.
And as much as we get complained about, we're at the top, the best. Just imagine what the rest are like.
Mm.
See, all this mythology we have, everything you see on television, it's not about white women working or getting professions, black women. It's
Mm-hmm.
never about black men. It's always black women. Why are they pushing that? Black women, for the most part, don't do drive-bys. For
Mm.
51 years, since 1970, they have had an official national take your daughter to work week. Have you ever heard anybody say it's take your son to work week?
Mm.
And look what we have. Over the last 20 years of this century, the two census takings we've had reveal that on average, only 28% of each year's high school graduates are male. That's all ethnicities. That's not
Wow.
just black people. Only 32% of the college undergrads are male. That's all ethnicities, not just black people.
Mm.
Only 36% of the grad students are male. That's all ethnicities, not just black people. This is the tragic one. Only 44% of the workforce is male. That's all ethnicities. That's not just black. 11 years ago, the Defense Department got so bent out of shape by the consequences to the military about mental toughness, they were lamenting the fact that for Americans, all demographics, all ethnicities, 42% of Americans 35 and under 11 years ago were born out of wedlock. Now it's a higher percentage. Tragically, 82% of Americans, all ethnicities 20 and under, are born out of wedlock. So there's no daddy from the get go. They were
Mm.
born out of wedlock. When I did this televised arbitration, and I was an authorized arbitrator in the state of California, recognized by the state Supreme Court as such, and everything I did on that was not fake, it was official, and the California Supreme Court ruled that it was enforceable anywhere in the state. Binding contractual arbitration, and that got approved in 2007 by the U.S. Supreme Court, is carrying out the U.S. Arbitration Act of 1928. Now, that said, we had a consultant, which was the largest fertility clinic in America. Do you know what the statistics were? Only 5% of their customers were married couples, 45% were declared lesbians, and 50% of their customers were single women, straight, who didn't want to be bothered with having a man or a husband around. And guess what? Out of that 50%, the majority were black women. Now, 55 years ago, these damn fool feminists and lesbians were declaring that marriage was a form of slavery for women. That got spread. Is it any wonder we get this hell? Because girls need daddy too. I mean, there's divorce, there's death, all kinds of things. There are accidents, bad luck. But when on purpose you decide to say, I don't want to be married, I want to have a baby. Well, you know, there's this thing. Let's face it. All guys don't look like LeBron or OJ or Denzel, and everybody's not an Olympic caliber athlete. You know, you're not a world-class driver like Lewis Hamilton or the fastest man in the world like Usain Bolt. But we make it. Every woman does not look like Rihanna or Beyonce or J-Lo. And they used to have a thing called Old Maid. Everybody's favorite old maid aunt. But we don't even do that. You got fat hippos running around obscene and slutting up Lizzo the lizard hippo. And there's no excuse for that woman running around naked acting like a harlot. And we idolize Cardi B, a streetwalking hoe who brags about drugging her tricks so she could rob them. I used to put them in jail. I represented a lot of them before that too. And then I went on Riff. This is a new thing. Some people wanted me to download that so we could have a conference. And I turn it on, and all of the music is about the B word, the N word, pain, dysfunction, and ripping off this, that, and the other, exploiting your women or your men or whatever. That's just sickness. We should not have that. And if you want to see what's going on out in the hood, I'm seeing something that is even more dangerous and a bit more scary. And that is the consequence of this being the truth. 50-some years ago, I'm sitting in the Library of Congress for hours studying microfilm copies of slave pamphlets, how to have raised slaves for fun and profit, over and over again. Make the elements of slavery part of the Negro's culture, and they'll teach themselves to be slaves. And I'm looking at this over and over. And we had this welfare state that came into being 50-some years ago. It had good intentions. Well, the people had good intentions that came up with it. But it got to be used for a dysfunctional purpose. In other words, instead of it being a safety net, it became, I have babies to get a check so I can support myself by getting knocked up. That's just what was going on slave plantations. And see, that's spreading to the whole system, not just to black people. It's coming from black folk. And black men, once again, are being used as everybody's guinea pig to try something out. And 50-some years ago, they came up with the idea that war was a man thing, or if it was a lesbian, men are awful, they're no good. If you got feminists, they hated that they weren't men. You got the gay boys that said, wow, why can't we be real men? And then you got the beta boys, soy boys, the nerds, and they were talking about why is it, even though we're white men, we can't be real men. Everybody hated men. So they wound up getting control of the entertainment and news media and eventually politics. You know, that LGBTQ, That Q
Mm-hmm.
on their website stands for queer and questioning. And one of the reasons politics looks so ratchet today is because too many people got into that Q thing trying to be questioning, and they don't want to be outed from their little individual closets. And Republicans and Democrats, particularly on the local level, they put up a big smoke screen of conflict, but they swing with each other. They exchange husbands and wives, but it's the husbands exchanging for husbands, so it's boy on boy, and the wives exchanging for wives, so it's girl on girl. And that's one of the reasons it looks so crazy here in Memphis. It's their right to do it, but I mean, they're not representing the black constituency here. They're surrogates for somebody else, either the very affluent who get rich off of the tax dollars. You know, we've got 300 some $1 million we spend every year, $330 million here in Memphis, and none of it goes to the middle class or small businessmen, either white or black.
And the
The
judge, I
school
gotta ask you,
system's
yeah.
gone to hell. Our black city councilman turned it over to the county board, where you've got 72% of the student body population represented by 2 votes, and you've got 28% of the student body population represented by 6 votes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they turned it over to Teach America's affiliate here, where now the teachers don't even need a 4 year degree. All they need is a 2 year associate degree, and this Teach America affiliate runs the education program at a junior college. It trains the would-be teachers. It selects them. In other words, it hires them. It pays them, and they start off at 28 to 32,000 a year, which is wow. That's poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And they discipline them and they assign them. And some years ago, they wanted to get rid of the high paid, excellent black teachers who'd been teaching 25 and 30 years and had master's degrees and PhDs. So
Right.
they tricked them into saying this school is on a level 1 and the funding is about to be canceled. Can you come in and help? We'll give you a raise. And then setting them up for failure, no backup, and then firing them for cause within 3, 4, 6, 8, 11 weeks. So they got rid of all of these excellent teachers who were paid a lot. Now they got these 28 to 32,000 a year type. They don't even have a retirement plan for these people. And they're
Mm-hmm.
bringing in folk who want to be teachers so they get their student loans excused. And meanwhile, they can send their soon to be or actual husbands through medical school, dental school, business school, or law school. And it's a mess. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have any vocational training. They don't have STEM focus. We got a jerk down there in the mayor's office who says the solution is to give them some laptops so they can play video games. What happened to education? Or it's not our responsibility. Hell, you sucker. That's what you got elected for. What do you mean? And let's bring in the state and the county because we don't know how to handle it in the city. Some people in the city know how, but they never get brought in on any of this. I did it 25, 30 years ago. I dropped the recidivism rate, that's repeat felony of charges, from the statewide average of 80% down to 18 in my courtroom. And it was dropping when I retired in 2000. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, tried and proven, but you don't want it. You want glitz. And we've had hacked voting machines in this county that the Justice Department under Bush, the Justice Department over under Obama Tang, the Justice Department under Trump declared to be corrupted, so that there hasn't been a fair election since 2000. The thing operates under Windows 2000, for goodness sakes. There has never been a firewall nor a security system for it, and the Justice Department Under Obama even said it's like putting a ballot box in the unlocked ballot box in the alley behind the polling place.
Wow.
I mean, and the majority black county commission, every time it comes up for vote on a simple resolution, just to replace these corrupt D-ball voting machines, we hereby resolve and sign off 3 black Democrat representatives of the county have voted against it. Now, they aren't the same because they've got term limits. So there's still a hung up right now because some don't want there to be a paper trail so you can audit this thing. Just think about that. And you claim to represent the people and you don't want a fair vote count, that's because they get selected. It is so bad that if you have the encryption code, which I publish from time to time, just to make the corruption obvious, you can go online, and California gives an instruction set up on how to hack these machines that they used to use. We still use. There are only 2 counties in America that still use them. Haywood County and Shelby County, both in Tennessee, West Tennessee. So you take a cell phone, a smartphone, and you dictate you type in a text. I can type one into you. And you put in the candidate numbers, and you put in the office number, and you put in the encryption code, follow the instructions, and when you get 5 feet away from the voting machine, you press send. That's read through the card slot on that voting machine, and you own that machine instantly. You own every other machine in that precinct in 10 minutes, and within 45 minutes to an hour, you own the whole system. What kind of election is that? And we've got a thing like, okay, let's take some things. Some people, black on the county commission, got together and passed a resolution to sell the public park where Nathan Bedford Forrest statue is located, and the one down on the bluff where Jeff Davis's statue was located. Davis was president of the Confederacy. Nathan Bedford Forrest, before the Civil War, ran the largest slave trading business in America. And he was a Confederate general. Your mother's been working on this one, that massacre down at Fort Pillow. He massacred all of those black soldiers down there. And Fort Pillow shouldn't have been operating, but there was a Union colonel and another Union general who were operating a corrupt business, and they wanted that fort down there to continue their corruption. Well, anyway, all these black soldiers got done in. That's another story. But they sold the parks to a so-called private charity that had been incorporated to operate city parks as a charitable thing. Now, that doesn't even fit because the city operates it. But anyway, with no bid, no auction, this charity that was chartered by one of the black county commissioners bought the park down there in the hospital complex where Nathan Bedford Forrest was located for $2,500. Hell, I'd have written them a check for 4 or 5 times that to get it. But they didn't put it up for bid. And the same group wrote them a check for $2,500 to get this property down on the bluff. Well, they removed Jeff Davis's statue. They removed Nathan Bedford Forrest's statue. And somebody's half brother who's on the county commission that voted for this is getting paid $5,000 a month to store Nathan Bedford and to store Jeff Davis, the statues. The facility that it's being stored in is $96 a month. And now those 2 properties combined are worth about $20 to $25 million. So nobody paid attention to this corruption. People ought to be in a prison for that. What's the deal? And then, of course, we get to complaining about a system that doesn't work for us because we don't work for ourselves. We don't work to make our system work. This is the largest predominantly black city in America. It's the 14th largest city, and get ready for it. It's bigger than Atlanta. And you want to see how bad it is and what it ought to be? Go drive out in East Memphis, Germantown, Collierville, etc. Take a look at it, and then come down into the inner city, outside of the gentrified Midtown area. They're two different cities. One has one of the lowest per capita incomes in America, and one is amongst the highest. But you see, I tell the people out in the high area, you can't get away with it. You need to pay attention to what's going on down there. You know what I get from the white folk out here in the affluent areas? Well, why don't some of your people get concerned? They just don't have a very tentative attitude toward things. It's lackadaisical, Judge. Why don't they pay attention? And look at this crime thing going on. And you got these unmanly punks out here. They gunned down this rapper, and then they shot up the place doing a drive-by. A couple of days later, when some people were having a memorial service, there's just some unmanly punks. They're reflecting what their great-great-great-grandmamas were up to when they used to pour battery acid on their neighbors because the neighbor looked at an ex-boyfriend a year and a half before. And by the way, the great-great-great-great-great-grandmama is not quite 70 years old.
I'm glad you brought up the young Dolph situation. What's your take on the whole thing? Was that a professional hit,
I don't
a
know.
neighborhood beef?
It's the third time he'd been shot at. He got
Right.
wounded before.
Yeah, in Hollywood. Yeah.
And let me say this. Personally, there's a certain black singer of international note who lives here. He owes me $5,000 cash. He ripped it off and coked it up. And the last two times I've encountered him have been out at the Memphis airport. He literally turned around and ran. Now, if I was the wrong kind of person, which I'm not, no telling what would happen to him. A lot of people would say 5K is worth taking somebody out on principle, but to me, it's not. I made that in about 10 minutes worth of work the last job I had. 10 minutes is not worth going to prison, or not worth taking somebody's life, but for some people it is. I don't know. But the other thing is you live in Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And if you're eligible to purchase a firearm in Tennessee, you can carry it without a permit. So I always wonder about people who are in the public eye and they go around and they're not armed, or you don't have a security crew, or even just riding with somebody, with one of your partners. He's not your bodyguard, but you each watch each other's six. So
well, you know that, well, Judge, like the streets have been talking, and there's a lot of stuff on social media, but they say he did have a gun on him. You know, it was his time.
Well,
I
yeah,
guess.
But then that gets to the other thing. You mean you're a grown man in your 30s and you haven't taught yourself situational awareness? In other words, your radar keeps going. You check your six all the time. You don't turn your back on a plate glass window in a public place.
Well, you know, also there's a footage of a guy that's supposed to be, I guess, a friend firing back at the guys at the Mercedes.
That may
so
have
what was he doing? I'm trying to figure out.
May have happened, and it's been suppressed. See, on a homicide case, there are a whole lot of people that don't get brought in because the detectives say, oh, he's not a bad guy. No point in putting him through all this hell. And Memphis, by the way, has one of the best homicide squads in the whole of the United States. That's why they brought that series here, 48 Hours, to Memphis, because this homicide squad, there are a lot of black folk that have street experience and a connection to this community, and they can get out in it and get information. Several times the FBI has just screwed something up. Like one time they got a whole bunch of confiscated guns they had in an unsecured van got stolen. They brought in Memphis detectives and they got all the guns back in 48 hours. That's
You know
because they can get into it. And I
it's
know
been
some
yeah.
of them, and they grew up in the hood.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been past 48 hours now. I would say just about.
Yeah,
It got to
I
be.
mean, but I'm just saying sometimes. Let me tell you this: most of the
Mm-hmm.
time, homicide cases are unsolvable unless
Right.
the offender, alleged offender, is known to be acquainted with the alleged victim. Otherwise, somebody ran a big mouth off. He
Right.
was trying to impress some junkie babe who turned him in because she didn't want to do some time on a drug case. I had 4 or 5 really dumb fools in my courtroom. They'd pulled off a drive-by, shot and killed 3 people and wounded 4 others, and this has been 25, 26 years ago. You know how they got caught?
Oh.
They Xeroxed the articles in the commercial appeal and signed them and were passing them out. Yeah, man, check out what we did.
Mm-hmm. You know what, the problem with this case, Judge, I'm gonna be honest. My people from there. I sometimes I go there about once or twice by Airways and catch them. Cause my folks live in Bunker
I know
Hill,
where the
right
place
behind.
is.
Yeah, but I'm saying like, just for the people out there. And what I'm saying was weird about the whole thing is that you got the police precinct right across down the street, you got cameras everywhere. I think these were some outside hitters. These ain't no neighborhood people. These outsiders. They
Yeah,
came in
maybe.
here and did their thing.
And by the
These some
way,
outside hitters.
they kept talking about his Lamborghini in the parking
What
lot.
was that,
Then
Judge?
it
Tell me what it
became
is
his
exactly.
Corvette. But what it is it's a camouflage Camaro.
Okay.
See
See,
how they
see, I
want
know
to
I can't
talk
trust the
about?
news. I don't know what the bank is.
You
Just
don't.
confusing.
They get the information so wrong so often. I'm sure he's a fine young man. I never knew him. I didn't
Well,
listen to the.
I'm a fan of his music. You know what? I tell you how I became a fan. I don't agree with everything, but I remember like about 7 years ago, I was going to Ferguson and Baltimore, and they'll ask me where I'm from. I said I'm from Memphis. And man, we love Young Dolph, man. You know Young? I said who? Dolphin? No, Young Dolph, man. Like Freddie Gray friends would tell me, man, we love Memphis cats, man. We love Yo Gotti and Young. We love y'all Memphis guys. See, Memphis is interesting because people in Memphis don't understand how powerful brand Memphis is everywhere else.
No, they
So when I
don't.
go to a place like Los Angeles or New York, I tell people I'm from Memphis because there's people from Memphis connected that's doing amazing things
And
in
see,
these so-called
that's
communities.
why I let them talk me into running for mayor in 2023. This
Yes, sir.
town needs to be actualized, motivated, and activated.
Yes,
There is
sir.
no reason why black folks should not have a jewel in America known as
Right.
Memphis. It's right
That's
where the
right.
main waterway crosses the main
Everything run through here,
highway.
like you said, Judge.
Everything's
Everything
got to come
goes through
through
here.
here.
Yeah.
And these jackasses that we put in, these shysters that don't know what it is to represent a constituency, they're crooks, most of them, not all of them. Some of them are decent and honest. But we don't get representation, and the money goes to somebody that just keeps getting it, getting it, getting it, getting it. And the game is zoning variances from city council or county commission, appropriation of the tax dollars to buy the material, buy the land, and pay for it being constructed. And then this group being able to operate it and return 4 to 6% of their net profit to the city or the county. And you
Mm-hmm.
see, smart accountants zero that out. So there's no net profit to get a percentage of. So we just pay them for it. And it's like they get richer, and richer. And meanwhile, some people down there, they get their egos stroked and they get a little pocket change from doing what they do. And it's bad, bad, bad. And see, we need to
Yeah.
man up. I know how it works. The other thing is, your mayor can't walk down in the majority of the places he represents without the police escorting. Otherwise, somebody's likely to take him out.
I gotta actually, Judge, you a public figure and you a guy that's well respected in our community, in our neighborhoods. Young Dolph was well respected where he was from, and he was giving back a lot to the community.
Yeah, I know.
So,
But you
I mean,
see,
like, what you say? Like, people say he shouldn't have been in the neighborhood. He
in
should have
other
moved out.
words,
What would you say
they
about that?
tried to kill me before. That was even one thing when I had that James Earl Ray case. There were 5 clowns with some heavy equipment tried to break in the house. We had a shootout. About 30 some shots got exchanged, and
Wow.
half of somebody's ear was on my windowsill in the morning when Director Renfrey and another detective came by, and we did a quiet investigation. Somebody had turned the tapes off, about dispatcher's recording devices off, about 35, 40 minutes before this went down, and about the same after. There were no hospital reports or anything like that. And there were heavy blood trails front and back from the 5 that were involved. I mean, but you see, if you put yourself in the public eye, you cannot model yourself on Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and all of these nonviolent types who got killed and taken out. You got to be prepared to take somebody to Valhalla or send somebody to Valhalla. Maybe they'll get you, but at least make it costly. And watch what's going on around you.
Well, like with the thing with the young Dolph thing, I would say this is that like them last 2 instances where he was shot at, it was like allegedly people from a rival artist camp, like Yo Gotti's camp, was connected to that. Like the 100 shots at his SUV that was bulletproof in Charlotte. The van that allegedly did a drive-by was registered in the name of the rapper known as Black Youngster, but he said that his identity was compromised. And then in Hollywood, when he was shot 3 times, and I don't see how he survived that. That was point blank range, getting shot 3 times. It was
That's
some
why
guys allegedly connected to Yo
when
Gotti.
you're trying to take somebody out, you don't
Mm,
just shoot them once, twice, 3 times. This is not a movie.
right.
Most of the homicides that I've had where I had 42 first-degree murder cases I tried as a defense lawyer where they demanded a death penalty, and there were a bunch more where they just wanted life. And I don't know how many I presided over. Typically, one person has killed the other, but he doesn't know it because there's no reaction. You shoot
Right.
somebody, they don't go, oh, like they do in the movies. They just stand there, keep shooting back. They're already fatally injured. Real professionals, if they're doing something, they'll say, hey, man, check me. You see anything? No, man, you're clean. In other words, a lot of times, some of these people have been shot multiple occasions, and they know that in the heat of things, they often don't feel that they got hit, didn't feel it when they got hit. So, yeah, 3 times. See, unless you shoot somebody with a rifle, serious rifle, 2, 3 times with some pistol caliber or an AR. AR isn't but a 22. In the military,
Mm-hmm.
they're more concerned about carrying lots of ammunition because they have a base of fire where they lay down covering fire and they want to keep the enemy's head down while another group maneuvers to take the ground and do a final assault on the objective. So it's 22. And in the military, they call that a mouse gun. In the NAM, they called it a Matty Mattel special. And it's a question of whether that is adequate. You shoot a deer with a 30-06 and he'll run 150 yards before he piles up. In most states, an AR, which is a 223 or a 5.56, is too small to legally shoot a deer with. It's only suitable for varmints, rodents, and stuff like that, ground squirrels and things like that, gophers. So, unless you shoot somebody with a pretty large size weapon, hell, there have been situations over in the sand pile recently where people got shot with a 2 or 3 times with a 50 caliber Browning. That's a 50 caliber Browning machine gun round. And they still kept moving. So humans can be fairly hard to kill if they've got the adrenaline up and they've got that mindset. I feel no pain.
Yeah, but with him it's interesting because they said the last time it was a fatal time, people let like 50 shots fired at him, 50 rounds. So like you said, they was a little bit
Then how many
excessive.
times did they hit him?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like they keeping everything hush hush, but there's photos of a guy that's supposed to be one of his partners trying to answer back at the guys in the
I'm
Mercedes, but it's
saying that's a good thing. See, in Tennessee, you not only have a right to self-defense,
mm-hmm.
that right extends to the defense of third parties. So if somebody was present on the scene and somebody came and tried to gun down this young man and they saw it, under Tennessee law, they would be entitled to use deadly force against the perpetrators. It's the charge to the jury says self-defense, but it reads defense of self or a third party. So you can defend a third party like it was yourself.
Mm.
That, by the way, is why police shoot somebody. Police don't have any more rights to self-defense or use of deadly force than an ordinary citizen has. They have the same rights. An ordinary citizen has the same rights to use of deadly force as a cop. There is one difference. If it's a cop and it involves a felony or an escape from a felony, it can be a reasonable suspicion that a felony has been committed. For an ordinary citizen, the standard changes to a felony that, quote, has in fact been committed.
Mm. I
In
actually
fact,
like
landmark case in America about the use of police force against a felon or a person suspected of it comes out of Memphis. It was a 1974 case. I was here in Memphis when it happened, a lawyer. And what was going on is somebody was escaping from the police. He was climbing a chain link fence. Cop ran up to him, stopped, calmly unholstered his revolver, took careful aim, and shot him in the back when he was at the top of the fence and killed him. Well, that went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. The case came back, I think it was 1979. And basically, the ruling was unless the person constituted a threat to the officer or to third parties, he was not entitled to use deadly force. So that case came out of Memphis. I mean, when I was the prosecutor, I'd go out with the cops sometimes and I'd run into other ones. And, we had a couple of standoffs. And some of the cops would laugh, said, "Don't you know who that is? This case is going to be in front of him on Monday. And you sitting up there threatening to shoot him, and he's got his 357. We'll shoot you." Cops have problems with each other. And sometimes what happens in the locker rooms is not cool. We had a time around here some years ago where black cops were not answering calls for help from white ones and vice versa.
that's why it's good to talk to you about this history, especially being the first black prosecutor in Shelby County, Tennessee, and Memphis.
Well, first black prosecutor for the city of Memphis.
Yes.
Arthur Bennett was one, and he was for the county, but they used to
Okay.
have concurrent, same cases, separate jurisdictions.
Oh, it's good to know that. You got a history. Because people
And I
like,
also ran the public defender's office in Memphis back in the 70s. That's before the city lost the felony jurisdiction and criminal jurisdiction and just started handling traffic stuff.
okay, like I gotta ask you this. As a person who has very much of knowledge of the law, what would be some of the first things you would have done in terms of what happened to young Dolph? How would you like secure the crime scene, or
No,
what would
they
you have
did. They
done?
did an excellent job. Like
Okay,
I'm saying, Memphis homicide
it's
for
ridiculous.
MPD has one of the highest reps in the country.
Mm. The homicide rate is high here. It's
I'm
ridiculous
talking
high,
about
but
the homicide bureau
ability
of
to
the
close
Memphis
the case,
Police
right?
Department. By
I'll
the
say
way,
this,
interesting
yeah.
thing about that, to show you that, I had long discussion with retired Captain Tommy Smith, who was over the Memphis homicide squad, and they were adamant that James Earl Ray did not shoot Dr. Martin Luther King. For some reason, the corrupt district attorney's office was trying to throw everybody off the scent and insisted on going after James Earl Ray. So, I mean, there
it's
is
interesting.
that
Yeah.
thing.
You bring up James O'Reilly, I'm thinking about, November 22nd will be the 58th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. And he had protection, he had security, and it didn't do him any good. It
I
was
know
a
if
nightmare on
somebody
Elm Street.
wants to get you, they'll get you.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby
Right.
shot him with the press, the cameras, the police in the police station.
But he was friendly with the police, from my understanding. He had a relationship with some
Yes,
of the officers there. They
yes,
allowed him in.
yes. See, here's one thing that too many people don't get about what we do. We're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with human beings in the criminal justice system. Other humans are dealing with human beings in the criminal justice system. Ordinary people, too many of them act like nobody can be trusted. Most people can be trusted, some can't. And the fact of the matter is, human nature being what it is, sometimes you have to depend on other people. And that's why we have high appreciation of courage and bravery. It's in the middle of an ice age, 25,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Europe or Africa, doesn't make any difference where, Asia, Pacific Islands, Australia. You're after some big beast that can crush you. And you got to depend on one of your homeboys to have your six to get you out of a mess. And see, we sacrificed ourselves for the good of somebody else. That's called altruism.
Mm-hmm.
You went out and you hunted the lions to keep them off of the village. See, what we look at today, we get all freaked out off of just ordinary adversity. White supremacy is nothing but a form of adversity. You know how we used to handle adversity that was called Simba on the Serengeti Plains? We had our 13-year-old boys as a rite of passage go kill Simba with a wooden spear with no iron head on it. That's how you became a man. You had to go kill your lion.
Wow.
Now, look at how punked out we are now. And,
Well,
oh my
okay.
God, we have
Yeah.
to protect all the children from being bullied. See, handling a bully is a rite of passage. You screwed up the courage to bust him in his mouth or in his jaw or in the eye or
You
in the
know what?
nose.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, even when I got to get back to young Dolph, for the fact that Judge, you and him probably got along pretty well
Maybe
because
we
he
would
believed.
have.
I mean, I know not even on his music, but the fact that he believed in black masculinity. He had a young, beautiful family. His partner, his female partner, has a foundation called Black Men Deserve to Grow Old. So they
Yes.
believe in black
I
masculinity.
work
It's
with black
unfortunate.
youth and I
Yeah.
understand it. Look at
Mm-hmm.
me and you.
Yes, sir.
I hooked up with you because you're doing the kind of thing that I admire and promote. My
Yes,
mantra
sir.
about manhood is about promoting manhood and protecting womanhood. I said it all the time. Men should give guidance and women should give advisement.
Mm. Yeah, I think
See,
it's an interesting because we allow the powers that be to dictate our relationships and how we view each other,
I don't.
especially through the media.
I don't. That's why so many connected with or reliant upon the media hate my guts because, see, me and you, we don't have the excuse, oh, well, it was about the money. I had to do what I had to do. No, hell no. What you had to do has nothing to do about money. It's got to do with principle, purpose,
Yes,
and
sir.
cause. See, young black folk, young white folk don't have a cause. The young white ones are have a new cause. Well, they've got it again. It's called Save the Animals, ecology. But whereas they do this thing with Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and you hear these sad commercials, poor Al is confined in the kennel and chained in the cold, and he will never know love unless you send in 19.95 a month to the ASPCA so someone can show Al love. Well, see, Al doesn't have to have four legs, he can have two. And the colored become the adopted animals for the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in America. And that includes the 2-year leg cattle, the colored folk, black folk, Negroes.
So
We're
yeah,
getting off
people
the
like they,
cause, but what do
yeah.
we have? None. We have a slave mindset. It's white supremacy is holding us down, but that's just adversity. Because if men hadn't done what they did over the many thousands of years that we've been here, 250,000 since we've been anatomically modern, and before that, our ancestors, going back about 3.5, 4, 5 million, when they seemed to have switched over to being bipedal, they looked like chimps, but they walked upright, started making tools, and now we find out chimpanzees make stone tools. So, it's a primate characteristic, but we have been about some things for a long time, but we forget, and we have conquered adversity. So now everything is endangered unless we put it on a protected species list, and then we have to protect it from poachers. But you see, there are things that ate us for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a midnight snack. Humans lived inside of a real, live, ongoing 24/7, 52 horror movie. For real. Now that it's safe for the most part, we don't have to worry about something eating us. We got to worry about each other because we're getting evidence on the population front. We still have to have these points and principles so we don't kill each other too readily. There are always going to be sickos who will kill you. There are
I'm gonna
always
ask you, yeah.
mentally ill folk, but
Well,
we
I gotta
don't
ask you,
want
yeah.
that level of mental illness to keep ramping up.
But I mean, you guys are talking about being, predatory. Business is warfare. Is about survival. Is about fight. But I mean, you look at you. You deal with the industry, Hollywood, and also Young Dolph dealing with the music industry business, which is cutthroat. And people claiming that he was very like an independent artist who had a distribution deal with a record label, but he was making a whole lot of money as an independent.
I know that's
And
always
folk,
the excuse,
yeah,
always the excuse with the money. But I quit
okay,
that last time, and CBS owed me $28 million.
hmm
I quit a number of times on that show. I said, I quit. I don't have to put up with this. And meanwhile, you come over here, I'm kicking your ass personally. And you can call the goddamn police all you want, but I know you're not going to because you don't want a scandal to come out. Now, bring your ass over here. I'm putting my foot in your behind. Oh, excuse me. I forgot. Knowing your proclivities, you might enjoy that little rough trade.
But I mean, that's real. That's tough talk. I know I had a mentor of mine, or Jake, I call him. He said, "Under nobody dies a natural death in show business." He worked at Stax, worked with Sammy Davis Jr. and all these people. He was telling me these stories about people, like even the Booker T and the MG's drummer Al Jackson Jr. He said that everybody knew who actually did that to Al Jackson Jr. He was found dead. Legend of a home invasion in his home. But like he said, nobody dies a natural death in show business. And
Well,
I'm looking at.
look at the boy guy
Young
you
Dolph,
just mentioned
yeah,
with the one eye, the glass eye.
the guy with the glass eye.
Yeah,
Oh, Sammy Davis,
Sammy Davis.
Smokey, as Frank
Yeah,
Sinatra
but
would
you
call
see,
him.
Sam, the word I got from the people that provided set security,
Mm-hmm.
and also with my connections with the bodyguard industry and that thing, the word was that white Jewish wife of his there was a certain person in a certain organization that liked her, and he was going to kill Sammy. So Frank
Mm.
Sinatra intervened, and they gave him a choice: give up a hand or something else. So he gave up an eye so he could keep breathing. See, that stuff happened.
I heard, you know what? My friend who's deceased, he told me almost a similar story like that, but he said it was like because Frank got mad because he had thing for Ava Gardner and
Well,
they knocked
yeah,
his
but
eye out.
anyway,
They said it was a car accident, but it really, like you said, them goonballs, the mob guys,
yeah, well, this one
made him
was
offer he
that
couldn't
Frank
refuse.
intervened to keep him from
Yeah, but
being
like
killed.
it wasn't a car accident because y'all keep on y'all tell basically it was not the car accident story. That was like
No,
a cover story.
that was a cover
What
story.
y'all telling me.
You're going to give up something if you want to keep breathing.
Yeah, but that industry, though, you got to make deals. Like I look at all music
Well,
having
let
some
me put it
demonic
this way.
quality
I
to
won't
it.
mention his name because he may still be breathing. But back in the 60s, we heard a rumor going around
Mm-hmm.
the black student circuit. You know, we were out in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
that when Berry Gordy came to town, he got visited. They pistol whipped him, and some people were getting 15% off the top from everything Motown brought in. Well, years later, after I got this show, one of my neighbors and I was sitting around drinking a little whiskey, and he's a rough white guy. Boy, that man was not somebody to mess with. And he was talking about he had his boys go by, and he accompanied them, and they whipped up on Berry Gordy, and he got 15% off the top of everything Motown made. And
And
matter
he
of
told you
fact,
that.
he
Your neighbor
talked
told you
about the
that.
Jackson Five.
Yeah.
I went to the first Watch Festival after the riot, 66, and they had a talent contest. And the agreement was is that Motown was going to give a recording contract to whoever the winner was. The Jackson Five did not win. I was there. They came in fourth place.
Mm-hmm.
There was a group, I don't remember who got third, but second was a group kind of like the Temptations. And in first place was a woman kind of looked like a better looking Aretha Franklin, but she sang like her. Well, my neighbor told me that even though that was what was in the LA Times the day after, they went and they made their arrangements. He said they wanted a boy band. So they said, you're going to pick this group, the Jackson Five. So everybody was concerned about, wait a minute, didn't that woman win? And these guys with that group come in second. Who are these folk? And the Times put a retraction and said, we made a mistake. The winner of the contest was a group of young kids known as the Jackson Five.
Now that's interesting. So, like I
Yeah,
said, I know.
it's
Yeah.
about love. The music, the sounds, like I said, I went on Riff, the new
Mm-hmm.
thing. Riff, I mean, I'm just sitting there trying to get into this meeting. And the
Mm-hmm.
first thing somebody's talking about, they got bees, and he ain't gonna have no bee unless they eat pea. And and then they got talking the N word a lot, more the B word a lot. There was a whole bunch of pain being expressed in these sounds, and uh, self hate and dysfunction. Man, I just said, wow, that's awful.
So you think like that the rappers like Young Dolph are to blame for the music they creating the reality through their music?
Mm-mm.
So you don't blame the music.
No, it's a collective thing. When I was sitting
Mm-hmm.
on the bench, who did I blame? The drug dealer, the junkie, the system, his mama, the police department, the politicians, the exploitation of the whole thing, the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances of how he'd been let down in the educational system. He'd been let down from lack of parenting, and he let himself down. See, I found out that when you have such things, let's just take drugs. It's not about trying to get high. It's about trying to die. The people who
Mm,
become junkies, they hate themselves, but they don't have the
mm,
balls to pop a cap on their own heads. So drugs are a form of socially acceptable suicide. I've told this on your thing before.
mm-hmm.
Oh, did you hear about poor Allen? Oh, what happened to? I heard something tragic went on. Yes, he was talking about he had no purpose in life. And oh my God, he just jumped out of the 17th floor of his father's office building. Oh no, is that what happened? Well, the way we do it, man, we was all over Stomp's house, man. Stomp's place, man. We had some fast smoke up in there. We was hitting that glass dick, man. Dude went fell to the ground, man. Spit foam was coming all out his mouth. Heels was kicking. Eyes done rolled up in the top of his head, man. Soon as we cleaned that shit up, man, we did 911. But by the time they got him to the emergency room, man, dude's heart done bust out, man. Man, cold blooded shit, man. Hope his mama don't freak. Ain't that the second one she done lost this year? See, that's socially acceptable suicide. You can blame the drugs. Oh, drugs have claimed another victim in South Memphis. Neighbors complained about foul odors, etc., etc. Police on
Wow.
entry found the body of blah, 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 blah. And that's what a lot of this violence is. You're not trying to, worry about getting dissed. You just hate yourself. You don't have the nerve to pop the cap on yourself. So you will
Mm-hmm.
provoke anybody doing anything to anybody, hoping that anybody will do you the personal favor of taking your miserable, sorry ass life.
Like suicide by cop, for example. People.
Suicide by cop is a form.
Mm,
Suicide by neighbor. Suicide by drive-by. See, I
mm,
had set up something no other judge was doing. I took advantage of something I'd lobbied to get put into Tennessee law back in 1988. It allowed the judge sentencing anybody to have a psychiatric evaluation done, where the people that were doing those psychic evaluations weren't worth shit anyway to begin with. So I put together a team, conscientious team, and we'd come back with 35, 40-page detailed analysis of the defendant and what was going on inside his head.
mm-hmm.
Ordinarily, what I would have gotten if I hadn't put it together was 3 handwritten lines of junk. But we started noticing that a lot of the violence was driven by suicidal ideation.
Mm,
Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather,
mm-hmm.
talked about it. And in the movie, the first one where this hitman, Luca Brazzi, shows up at
Yeah.
the wedding, and the mafia is scared of him. The only one that will deal with him is the old Don
Mm-hmm.
Corleone.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a scene in the book where the old Don is talking to Michael before before the old guy dies. And he said, "You need to find you a Luca. Luca hates his own guts, but he's scared to kill himself. But he will kill anybody for any pretext on the hope that that person will do him the favor of taking his life. And by the way, if he gets caught and he gets the chair, he won't squeal because the chair is exactly what he wants. He wants to die. So
Mm.
find you a Luca. He'll do anything for me because I'm the only person he doesn't want to be the one that kills him." Only 2 times I ever had a disruption in my court, on 2 occasions where the DA's office announced that they were not seeking the death penalty, and the defendant went off. "What the hell do you think I killed this fool for? Kill me. Send me to the pen. I'll kill me some MFs up there. They gonna kill me. I ain't doing no time."
Mm. Wow.
See, so drugs and violence in our neighborhoods are driven to a great extent by the desire to commit suicide. It's equivalent of suicide by cop, suicide by drug. They know it's going to kill them. That's why they do it.
All right. So, what do you think about? I mean, I met police officers. Somebody raised this point in the chat. I have met police officers that were like 20-year veterans or even like 30-year veterans, and they will tell you, I never had a problem, but I ain't never had to pull my gun out on anybody. But you get these cases where people been police for less than 2 years or maybe several months. They shooting everything and
Well, you
everybody.
know what
What's the
that is?
difference?
You
What
know
is the
what that
difference?
is?
What is what is Judge?
These cops that didn't have to pull their guns out, they have a presence. They have a form of personal charisma. They've
Like
got it
gravitas?
together.
Yeah.
The people that you have to worry about, whether it's a cop or whether it's on the street. I grew up in South Central LA. The
Mm-hmm.
person that you had to worry about shooting you was the scariest guy out there.
Mm.
Actual scene, an anecdote. Man, look at here. What you into? Man, I ain't paying no attention to your tacky behind. Man, why don't you just leave me alone, man? I don't want no trouble. Man, I heard you. Man, that ain't even me you talking about. Man, look here, man. I ain't gonna let nobody kill me, man. Man, who's talking about killing you? And then bam, bam. Man, why you shoot the dude? You saw him, man. He was gonna kill me. Man, that dude wasn't gonna do a thing, man. Why you shoot the dude? He shot him because he was the scaredest punk out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you have cops, you have judges, you have DAs, you have principals, you have bosses who are some scared punk ass MFs who got run home from school too much. So they have no personal presence or authority. So they cloak themselves with the authority of a position and they're getting revenge. There's a black judge down there, General
Mm-hmm.
Sessions. He's dead now. He used to
Okay.
get run home from school a lot, and he'd always take it out on any black defendant that reminded him of somebody that used to run him home from school. You got a couple of white criminal court judges that used to get run home from school, always trying to go for being a badass. There was one awful prosecutor, white guy down there, used to be a Marine, and he was always trying to do something dirty to somebody. We used to
Mm.
have defense and prosecution flag football games, and he'd always try to put a knee in somebody's back or step on somebody's ankle who was down on the ground after the play was over. He was a punk.
Wow. Wow.
We had one guy that became a cop with LAPD. He played on the football team I was on at Dorsey High. And even though this is just scrimmage with his own team, he would viciously try to put an elbow or a knee in somebody's back or hurt somebody on his own team just because he was like that.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, my fiance's first cousin at the time wound up marrying him. And she came home early from visiting some kinfolk in another state. And she walked in, and he was down on his knees, butt naked, and his squad car partner was busting him in his behind. And she filed for divorce. So, some months later, this punk had some of his boys break in, rape his estranged wife, and break both of her arms. See, they like that. So the ones that are always doing it are trying to be cops so they can, or district attorneys or prosecutors or somebody in charge or a judge, so they can get back at people that used to run them home from school or the ones that stand in for those. So it's a punk play. And that's something that they don't know how to weed out. There are a bunch of people that get recruited from the service who did not put the red dot on somebody, squeeze the trigger, and watch them fall through the optic. They wanted some action. So they want to come back and be cops so they can get a trophy that they can put up on their den wall.
Hmm.
Now, those are the bad ones. Sometimes somebody's got to do what he's got to do. But a lot of times you have cops who've never pulled a gun on anybody, white and black. And it isn't
Mm-hmm.
just a white thing. See, with the white ones that will shoot you, they come from a background that is in some eerie way similar to those who are trying to save you. The far left are into ecology and protecting the animals that are endangered species.
Mm.
These folk are the ones that are poaching those animals that are endangered species, because they look at you as a bunch of wild dogs who don't have the sense and decency to make where you are living a better place and try to jack your own neighbors up. They have no respect for you, and they look at you as animals, varmints. And then the other ones that are out there demonstrating for you look at you as animals that need to be protected because you're in danger.
That's right.
See, two sides of the same coin. Interestingly, I ran across the article and I posted it on Twitter. While the jury is out deliberating, you got BLM and Antifa folk getting pizzas with the far rights, and they're out there sharing pizzas.
Wow.
Two sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Be
it's like
careful
Democrats and
what you
Republicans. Yeah,
get, you know,
all in the same game.
all the same game. And yeah, you're right. A man can stand back and let it develop. If it gets out of hand, he'll take somebody to Valhalla. But on the other hand, the ones you have to worry about, whether it's a street person or it's a cop, it's the scary one who's a punk.
Hmm. I
See,
gotta ask
but
you,
then you have to
yeah.
establish it. See, the guy that doesn't pull his gun, people can read his body language, and he's not showing fear. He's showing, I'm in charge, and you see what I got on my hip. So if you wanted to go there, fine, but I'm going to treat you like you a man until you show otherwise.
I mean, there's a lot. Like you said that, I was thinking about the great Bass Reeves, how he was able to take 20 plus guys by himself back to Fort Smith.
Well,
You know,
not
he was
only
just able to
that,
take them guys by himself.
Bass Reeves has an interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm.
He arrested and had successfully prosecuted more individuals than any other lawman in American history. Bass Reeves was the U.S. Marshal appointed
Mm-hmm.
by the hanging judge Roy Bean down there in the Oklahoma Territory. He's the one that they based the Lone Ranger on, and he had 3 Tontos, not one, because
Mm-hmm.
he was dealing with the Indian Territory, so he had to have a Native American representative with him when he went and did what he did. He wore disguises, and that's where they got that mask for the Lone Ranger. And the way it came from is the federal prisoners would go to a penitentiary up in Ohio. And back in the
Mm.
20s, they had a radio station, and some of the people that was near to the penitentiary and some of the people that worked there would go to a speakeasy and they'd buy bootleg whiskey and beer. And they'd talk to the guards, and the guards would tell them the stories about this one black marshal who put all of these people in that prison, and they used him as the basis for a radio character called the Lone Ranger, but they made him white. And he became a Texas Ranger, one of those racists, rather
Right.
than a U.S. Marshal. By the way, Bass Reeves put his own son in jail for murder.
Yeah, he killed his wife.
And
His son killed his
yeah, and
wife.
guess what?
Right.
Bass Reeves himself got tried for murder. He got acquitted, but I mean, it ain't nothing new.
Yeah, but it's like
You know,
you brought a Wyatt Earp earlier who basically abused the badge, but Bass Reeves upheld the law. And he never got wounded either. He never suffered a
no,
wound of
he
any
did.
kind,
But see, the thing
which is
about Wyatt
amazing.
Earp is how many movies have they made about Wyatt Earp? How many
A lot.
TV series and how many books have they had? Wyatt Earp is a hero, but he got
Right.
prosecuted for murder for the OK Corral. But you know, that was what you had to do back then. Frontier justice. So it's changed.
Yeah, but yeah, Roy Bean was the judge down in Texas. Isaac Parker was the one in Fort Smith.
Isaac Parker.
Yeah, but you know that movie that came out, that Western
Same
though.
guy.
Yeah,
Both of
but
them were known as the
oh, they
hanging
both
judge.
were hanging people. Yeah, they was. But our outlaws were more impressive. I mean, like if you learn about the real story about Rufus Buck and Cherokee Bill, whatever the cat name. These guys were way more impressive than Billy the Kid or Jesse James to me.
Well, let's take Billy the Kid, William
Uh-huh.
Bonney. He's supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be a villain and an outlaw, right?
Right, supposed to be.
He was a hero to the Ninth Cavalry. What
Uh-huh.
he was doing is a lot of the people that got shot by William Bonney, aka Billy the Kid, were people that had beaten, shot, wounded, or killed a number of black soldiers.
So
By
Billy
the
Kid
way,
was wow, really? Wow.
by the way, the Defense Department's records even reveal this. There were more 9th and 10th Cavalry Buffalo soldiers killed by the Texas Rangers than by Native Americans.
Wow. No, now that put in perspective what happened in Brownsville back in 1906 and what
Okay,
happened in
let's
24
put perspective.
up in Houston and Camp Logan.
White Colonel Grierson.
Mm-hmm.
Grierson, interestingly enough, was the subject of a John Wayne movie called Horse Troopers that took place during the Civil War. John Grierson, who was a general during the Civil War, led a huge cavalry raid into the South and kicked butt. 1/3 of the cavalry were black troopers from Jackson, Tennessee, and Memphis. Most people don't know that. He was so impressed by them that he volunteered to be commanding officer for the 10th Cavalry. So they arrested Colonel Grierson outside of the fort because, well, the Texas Rangers did, because he was aiding and abetting the black soldiers to do what they did to impose justice in the area. So Colonel Grierson had to be rescued by some black troopers from the Texas Rangers.
Wow.
And John Wayne played General Grierson in the movie Horse Soldiers.
You know, and Sammy Davis Jr. played a Buffalo Soldier, right? One of the movies back in the day.
Yeah, and Woody Strode did. He was the second person that the Rams hired.
Very impressive.
Played in the NFL.
He was in Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, right?
Yeah, but he played in a Buffalo Soldier. He supposedly was defending this white woman, and he got charged with murder, but he got acquitted.
Well, I got to ask you,
folk got acquitted for killing white folk. Bass Reeves went on trial and got acquitted for killing a white guy who was a law enforcement person.
Well, I got to ask you this, Judge, about this Ahmaud Arbery. I don't want to call it the Ahmaud Arbery trial, but compare and contrast with the Cal Rittenhouse situation. What's your take on this trial concerning the guys who killed?
One thing people need to understand about criminal trials: the defense attorney tries to do what's best for the defendant. If it's a black defendant, you try to get as many sympathetic blacks as you possibly can on the jury. If it's a white defendant, you try to get as many sympathetic white jurors on the jury as you can. I've tried a bunch of white folk. In fact, I had the experience where rich white folk would hire me to represent, doctors, lawyers, businessmen. White preachers would hire me to represent some of their people when I was still practicing law. So if I got a white defendant, I'm getting as many good old white boys as I can on that jury. Damn the fact I'm not trying to get black jurors when I got a white client, unless it helps. And then sometimes you want just a certain type. Like I had a certain first-degree murder case that was tried four of the co-defendants were tried in front of this racist I talked about that was former head of the Grand Dragon. Head Grand Dragon and the head of the Citizens Council. Well, I got him mad at me, so he thought he was doing me a disfavor of transferring it out his court, and I got a fair judge. The other three are still on death row, and my client's walking around a free man. But what I did is his daddy was a preacher. So I selected a juror of old women, white and black, who liked to go to church every Sunday, and they were over 50, 45 anyway. And I even had a couple of white women on that jury who were Southern Baptists, but they liked to go around and listen to some fine brimstone from a black preacher. And he was a tall guy, like 6'4", and women thought he was good looking. And he always wore suits, and he was vined down with a watch. That was the only bling he had on, and shine shoes, and had a hat in his hand when he came in the courtroom. So my client had no criminal record, so he could testify. So I made sure that I got all of these church-going women up in there, white and black. I had 11 women on the jury, one guy.
But what do you think about them trying to
Wait a minute,
suppress?
let me
Yeah,
get to
okay.
the punchline.
All right.
The witness for the state was a prostitute. She was trying to get the reward.
Yes, sir.
And she came up in there with a little bitty micro minute with her fat thighs throwing and showing. And she crossed her legs up in front of this mostly all woman jury. So in final argument, it was one of my briefer arguments. I said, you saw this lady came up in here, a prostitute, a hoe, self-admitted. And she tried to flash them big, fat, bare thighs like you were supposed to be impressed. I said, but you saw that gentleman walk in and out of the courtroom, and you heard my client testify as to who that person was. And the question boils down to this: who you gonna believe, a hoe or the son of a preacher man? Defense rests. They stayed out about 25 minutes and came back with a not guilty verdict. And the other three sitting up on death row. See, the other three had white lawyers, and they were trying to get they were trying to get all black jury. I was trying to get an all female church going jury for my client. Because when I asked my client on the stand, who is that distinguished looking gentleman walking in and out of the courtroom? That's Reverend so-and-so. He's my father. All the women said, oh. I said, oh, we won this one. The son, you gonna walk. See, that's how you do it. Now, see, we have a new kind of defense lawyer. They get out of law school. They take advantage of advertising. They have good business acumen. Somebody's financing them. They have lost the art of law as a profession and turned it into a business. I used to get them in my courtroom all the time. They'd walk in with 10, 15 clients in my courtroom on a given day. And as soon as I told people they needed to go get a lawyer, they'd run out and get his card. But you see, he'd been out of law school 6 years. And I remember this one case where the defendant said, I'm not going to trial. I wasn't even in Memphis on that day. I got an alibi. I'm not going to plead guilty. And he didn't know what to do because he never tried a case. But he had lots of clients. Now, I advertise for lawyers and law firms in other states, but I vet them to see what kind of reputation they have and what they do in the courtroom. And if they do well in the courtroom, fine. But you see, we have too many lawyers now. The market is glutted, and these people have not had an internship and a residency in the DA's office or the public defender's office. And quiet is kept. In a lot of cities, you get much better representation by the public defender's office than you do by private counsel. Like, let's take Judge Tariq Sugarman here in Memphis. He's judge now. He was the part-time PD in my courtroom over a 10-year period. He had 64 jury trials over that 10-year period, which is a lot more than somebody just in private practice would have. But he had 61 outright not guilty verdicts. He had one of those not guilty verdicts had been a mistrial. That was case 62, was a first-degree murder case. And 2 of those 64 verdicts were guilty verdicts, but the jury found the defendants he represented guilty of misdemeanors, maximum 1129, whereas the minimum offer that he could get if they had pled guilty was 10 years on felony. So they had time served. So he won all 64 cases. That was the best in the state. And people would, I don't want no public defender, and they had him, but they got rid of him and hired some jackass that had never been in front of a jury, and they went to jail. I remember one time the public defender said, "Your Honor, may we approach you? State coming up? You coming up? Okay, fine." What was the matter? The state was announcing that they were going to drop the charges on this defendant. And the public defender was saying, "I want the man to pay costs so jeopardy attaches." Fine. This private lawyer walked in and he said, "Well, the family hired me to represent him." I said, "Okay. So we don't get any complaints." I gave him a 2-week continuance to familiarize himself with the case. This fool walks up and he's going to cop the man out to 5 years. I refused to take it. And I embarrassed him. I said, the public defender and the state have already announced when you came in and took over this man's representation that they were going to drop the charges. Now you're pleading him out to 5 years. The court's not going to allow that.
Wow. So I'm going to ask you this. Yeah. So your story, your antidote, your story you told was amazing about the jury, the importance of jury selection. But what was your take on them trying to deny black pastors from attending the trial
Okay,
down in
what
Georgia?
that is I've done that myself. Excuse me.
Okay.
We are having a fair trial. Now, the Constitution of the United States and that of Tennessee guarantees the defendant a public and speedy trial, so nothing secret goes on up in here that should not go on. But this court is not going to tolerate the audience making faces at the jury and trying to get their attention and act like they are trying to intimidate anybody. And if the court sees any more of that, somebody's instantly going to spend some time back there. Deputy Williams or Deputy Officer Duckett, would you see if your key works in lockup? If it does, the first somebody I point to, you take back there. And then see, stuff goes on like this. You never can tell what's going to happen with a trial. I remember one murder case, a black senior chief petty officer killed a gunny sergeant, white, out at Millington. And they didn't want it going in front of the jury. And JAG and the base were asking if it could be a bench trial just in front of the judge. I acquitted the guy. And the father of the victim walked over, and I'm getting ready to high sign one of my deputies to keep something from happening. The white father stuck his hand out and said, "Let me shake your hand, sir. You did what you had to do. I told that damn fool somebody was going to kill him one day if he didn't stop." Okay. Next thing, commercial appeal 3513 were all in the courtroom, and the family wanted blood because the defendant should fry in the chair for killing our baby boy and all of this. So the jury's deliberating. They come back with a question. You know what the question was? "Your Honor, if we feel that the victim deserved killing, do we have to convict the defendant?" I said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your question. You are advised that you are to refer to the written instructions contained in your trial jacket, and you may continue your deliberations and return such verdict as truth and justice dictate if you are able to do so without violence to individual principles." They found him not guilty of first-degree murder. They found him not guilty of second-degree murder. They found him, they deadlocked on manslaughter. So they let the guy cop out to 3 years, and they had no opposition to probation. You see how that works?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's out there hollering for blood.
Well, at least they were civil about it. It wasn't like a lynch mob rule type of thing. They actually asked
I
your
wouldn't let it
permission or
happen in
perspective.
our courtroom.
Yeah.
And that fool that tried Dr. Cosby was letting the lynch mob get in his courtroom.
Right. I gotta
And
ask
I
you this.
say fool
Yeah,
because that was embarrassing. His
it
wife
was.
had an interest in that case.
There you go.
He shouldn't
Conflict
have
of
let
interest.
that DA come in there who was using it as a political football after one DA, head DA, has said, we're granting him immunity from prosecution because we've investigated and there is no case. And then the other one say, no, we're going to dishonor that. Hell, you can't do that.
I mean, actually, like the Cosby, they gave him the civil lawsuit that he settled. He shouldn't have been no case at all, no criminal case. But is Cal Rittenhouse? You think he's open to civil lawsuits? Is this has this opened him up
I
to
don't
civil
know. He
lawsuits?
could. But see, pragmatically, forget all those TV judge shows. We did a
Okay.
disservice to the community. One of the
Mm-hmm.
problems is that your legal cost and attorney fees may far exceed what you can get from the defendant because he's judgment proof. He doesn't have any money.
But can Cal sue the media how he was portrayed? Can he sue the media, these corporations, the
No,
media?
because New York Times versus Sullivan. He's a public figure.
Okay.
He can't sue the DA's office because of sovereign immunity unless the DA's office got way out of line.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times you're stuck. These judge shows got everybody thinking that, yeah, I got a grievance, I can go. And see, the
Right.
shows would always guarantee that whatever the judgment or the award was would be paid.
Well, man, I'm gonna ask you about the Astroworld tragedy down in Houston with Travis Scott. Can people still file lawsuits if they take the refund? If they got their money refunded, can they still file lawsuit against
Yes.
the people that
Unless
organized the
there
event?
is a settlement that's contained in the refund, usually when you print out the check, it says this is in settlement of all potential and future claims, etc., from the individual concerned, his heirs, assigns, etc., 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 successors and contractual relationship, blah, 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 blah. And see, they're talking about suing the artist, but what does the artist have to do? He was just talent, and the people who would have the liability, the ones that put the thing on. And then, there are all kinds of other things. One other thing, too, in the Rittenhouse case, I've heard this
Mm-hmm.
brought up. The police knew who he was.
Hmm.
And there is a strong argument that defense, I didn't hear them raise it, but I might have, which was when the police, being aware of Rittenhouse being there over the course of several hours, he brought them food and water and they stopped and spoke with him because they did not demand that he leave. They de facto deputized him. See,
Hmm.
here's something most people don't understand about American law. The primary
Mm-hmm.
source of public peace, dignity, and order resides with the citizens, not the police. See, when the Constitution was written, it would be 60 some years before they invented police. See, police were invented in England at Scotland Yard in about 1843. The first
Hmm.
American police, based on the Scotland Yard constables, constabulary, they did not come into existence except on the East Coast in the 1850s. We had
Hmm.
marshals who were federal officers, and we had sheriff that were old common law office holders. And
Yeah.
what happens is that there is a posse comitatus, which consists of the citizenry. That's what they were talking about. The militia. See, when the Constitution was written, the militia was a term of art like the body politic, and that consisted of all able-bodied men, all able-bodied males between 15 and 60. And they had an obligation to arm and meet for the common defense.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that happened law enforcement while, the only formal organization was when the sheriff would deputize people. And essentially, any law enforcement person with the sheriff or the district attorney or a judge can deputize someone. So there was an argument that Rittenhouse didn't raise, but I actually did once or twice. The police deputized this man.
Mm.
We've got a Tennessee case that went to the Tennessee Supreme Court. There was a riot. There was a mob. And there was a homeowner, and it was a question of whether or not he was black. He was standing on his front porch, and there was a plainclothes white cop standing in the street. And the cop told the homeowner, get back inside the house. He said, go to hell. Well, the white cop whips back his coat as though to go for a gun, and the homeowner shot him to death.
Mm.
And one of the issues was whether or not this guy was passing for black. And one of the issues is the riot was going on because some people didn't want black folk living in this neighborhood. So the state Supreme Court said, even though he was mistaken in his belief that this person was a rioter or a member of the mob, it makes no difference, because as long as he had an honest belief that he was in jeopardy of suffering death or serious bodily injury, he could apply deadly force. He did not know that the person was a cop. So he's a black man.
You know, and Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm thinking about what you're saying, Judge, because if he really was berserk, he wasn't shooting up everybody. He didn't kill a whole bunch of people. He killed folk. He killed people, or tried to kill folks that engaged him in some type of way. And then when he saw police, he was willing to give himself up. So
He
to
was
me,
going to
when
the
you say all
police.
that,
That's where he was headed.
yeah, but I'm saying
That was a
he know what
police
he did.
checkpoint.
He was willing to, like, I'm in trouble, right? So I'm saying that to me, I can see why he got off. I can
Yeah.
see why he got off. I know it's messed up that people. I know his mama brought him there, but I can see why they
See, in
said
other
we
words,
gotta let
if
him
you're
go.
in a mob situation and the
Yeah,
mob looks like it's after you and a member of the mob grabs you,
right.
you might be very reasonable, even if you're mistaken as to all of the circumstances, if you have a reasonable belief that you are in jeopardy of suffering serious bodily injury or bodily harm or death, even if you are mistaken as to the circumstances, because a mob per se is a violent organism.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a riot going on or breach of the public peace by the mob, or they have refused an order to disperse, you are effectively put on notice that if they turn on you, you may suffer serious bodily injury or harm or death.
Because the second guy hit him with the skateboard one time, and he trying to go for his gun. So there
What's
you
a
go.
skateboard?
Yeah,
What's a
anything could be
skateboard?
a weapon though. Anything could be used as a weapon.
Skateboard is a club. A deadly weapon is anything designed, intended, or by its actual use is being employed as a deadly weapon. That is a device or contrivance capable of rendering serious bodily injury or harm or death. A
Yeah, because he said he was holding like a
skateboard weighs
baseball
about
bat.
what, 3 or 4
Yeah,
pounds? You know
yeah.
what your classic wooden club, cudgel, or mace weighed that they used to use back when? About 2.5 pounds. It'll kill you real quick.
Yeah, he said he was using like a baseball bat, like he was swinging that skateboard like it was a
By the way,
baseball bat.
more people are killed by baseball bats than guns, particularly these aluminum softball
Oh
bats.
yeah, yeah. It's like you
I
kill
mean,
somebody with
it's
an
an
icicle.
excellent club. Al Capone was known to favor baseball bats for killing folk. He
He
famously
had a
killed
guy.
one up in a banquet at a hotel.
He had a guy. Al Capone did, a bodyguard named Tony Accardo. They used to call him Joe Batters because he used to use baseball bats all the time. He got two. I think he got a grandson and a great grandson in the NFL right now. But
Yeah.
he was a Chicago Crime boss, Tony
You
Accardo.
look, Joe Kennedy, the scion of the Kennedy family, was a bootlegger. He was an
Yeah,
inside trader on Wall Street,
that's right,
and
Joe
he ran
Kennedy.
bootlegging rackets out of Boston. And he also kept the black folk, the colored folk, off the wharves
Mm.
and the docks. Real racist.
Well, he got his family paid the price for his The karma is a thing.
Karma's
People
a
think
bitch,
karma
ain't it?
affects you, but it affects your generations after you too.
Karma's a bitch.
Yeah.
I'll give the Bushes this. See, the Bushes and Obama are cousins
Uh-huh.
through Obama's mother. Also, Dick Cheney is one of their cousins. Also, Brad Pitt. Also,
Yeah, all
Warren
of them
Buffett, the
related. Yeah.
billionaire. Now,
Yeah.
the person they are descended from was caught up in that 3/5 thing.
Mm.
He indentured himself to get from France. He was a Protestant Huguenot and he wanted to escape Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
So he indentured himself for 25 years. And he was well, he had 7 U.S. presidents, 1 vice president, a bunch of actors, and quite a few multimillionaires and billionaires who were descendants.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me give Bush Sr. his due. At 18 years old, he was the youngest combat pilot,
Right.
American combat pilot in World War II. He actually
That's
got
crazy.
shot down in a torpedo bomber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. His father, Prescott Bush, was the Republican that supported Harry Truman with Executive Order 1981 that integrated the armed services.
Mm.
His father, Prescott Bush, was the Republican that backed up Eisenhower taking down Joe McCarthy.
Mm.
His father, Prescott Bush, was the Republican senator from Massachusetts who made most of the bonds to get Martin Luther King, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and most of the civil rights leadership out of jail in the South. See where you go with this? And guess who took over for his vacancy once he retired? John F. Kennedy.
I'm gonna correct you. Like Prescott was the senator from Connecticut. Now Bush Senior was born in Massachusetts,
Yeah,
like
well,
Kennedy.
yeah, Bush. In other
And
words,
Kennedy took over for Henry
he
Cabot
took over the
Lodge.
role. He took over
Yeah.
the role for New England. That was Kennedy. He was from Massachusetts.
Right, right.
Uh,
But now Bush Senior
Prescott
was
was
born in
from
Massachusetts too,
Connecticut,
though.
but they
Yeah.
interacted. See,
It's the same.
Connecticut's
It's
like,
about the same. It's about the same. I
yeah.
agree.
See, like for
But
example,
you know how people be? They be picky about stuff. They like, you get something
yeah. See,
mostly
like
right, they
Delaware.
try to call you out on that little thing.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes,
Now it
you
can
know,
get
a
confusing
lot
though.
of
I
heat.
know what you're
Yeah,
saying.
but see, when I say took over, Kennedy took over Prescott's role. What Kennedy
Right.
did in the Senate, Prescott had been doing. He was a Republican. They were switching to Democrat. It's like
Yeah.
Delaware. Delaware does not have an airport. In order to get to Delaware, you got to fly into Pittsburgh and take a bus or
Mm-hmm.
ground transportation to get into Delaware. They've got some private airports, but nothing that'll take a 737 or 767 or
Right.
777. So it's like that. But the Kennedy boy took over the Prescott man's role.
I'm gonna say
One
this too,
thing
though.
I point out to
Uh-huh.
black people in 20 years, there's no longer going to be a racial majority in America. Everybody will be a minority. That's going to be a time of coalitions and alliances. Now, what I would suggest to young black folk is this: do something, get yourself in the mindset right now of setting up alliances. Don't be talking all this hoopty wop smack about I ain't doing nobody that ain't black. You have pictures of FDR, Churchill, and Stalin sitting down
Mm-hmm.
as allies to get rid of Adolf and Tojo. They did, and they
Mm-hmm.
became enemies. See, you don't have to like somebody to have an alliance with them. You just have a
That's right.
commonality of purpose.
Yes,
And
sir.
black people damn sure well better get some alliances going with brown people before the white people decide to ally with them at the expense of black folk. And that's going to be sheer hell. Now, see, you can take advantage of one situation. The box on all the federal forms, state forms, says Hispanic, non-Hispanic. Then it asks you whether you're Caucasian or white, black or African American, you know, and all of the Native American, Pacific Islander, you know, this kind of thing. And Hispanic is habla español. No habla español muy bien, señores vato, que comprende mucho, eh? You know, Holmes, you know, you speak the lingo, you're Hispanic. But Hispanic includes blacks, it includes whites, it includes mestizos, mulattoes, and all kinds of other stuff. You know, Native Americans. So, Amerins, American Indians, as they used to be called. So there are all kinds of ways of coming up with alliances based on political, economic, and social interests. Now, we've got one very important one that unifies worldwide. It's the yin yang thing: manhood, womanhood, childhood. And I'm not saying just because you are gay, you're part of this LGBTQ cult, but the LGBTQ cult is against the family, manhood, womanhood, and childhood. And everybody on the planet has common cause with that because that was the driving engine. There's some exceptions. Gay folk have been around for a long time. But that's the driving engine that got us from the cave to the space station. That got us from hoofing it through some high grass to flying at 35,000 feet at 500 knots over that high grass. Manhood, womanhood, childhood. And every normal human on the planet has common cause against LGBTQ cult and people that want to destroy the nuclear family. Remember BLM? We went over that. We are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family, the ending of cisgender privilege. That's normal people privilege, mom and dad in the family. We are for families where they do not have to have. We are for removing age as a consent factor in agreements. That's that pedophile NAMBLA thing. That was third from the bottom. We are a queer affirming organization. You know, let them have their rights. Once, you know, straight folk don't get up and walk around with their dicks hung out on a float in a parade with children watching, talking about we like to do it doggy style. Reverse cowgirl on top. You know, that we don't push that naked Lizzo being naked and twerking and acting slutty in public. Remember what happened with Janet Jackson on the brief wardrobe malfunction? Now they're pushing it.
I'll never forget that.
You got naked Lizzo down on the floor of the Staples Center with her bare butt with some dental floss slid up. You can see the dental floss at the top. Twerking in front of all of those children watching the Lakers game. That's not good. See, that is our common cause that everybody can reach some agreements behind. People are very dissatisfied with the Washington, D.C. leadership because the majority has now dedicated themselves as their principal beneficiary being the LGBTQ cult, not ordinary people. So what is happening elsewhere in America that gives common cause? Well, every other industrialized society on earth has some government plan to deal with the growing obsolescence of ordinary working people in the face of industrial technology and computerization. We don't. I remember going to a warehouse in the 80s as part of a legal crew. We toured this warehouse. It was for a sporting goods distributor. They had 4,500 people working 3 shifts. It was a huge, one of the biggest structures, business structures in the country. 5 floors. Went back in the early 1990s as a guest of a community development program where this place was a sponsor. They didn't have but 120 some employees because they had completely automated, and the employees either worked in maintenance or setting up and programming and manning the computers, or they were security. So what happened to these other 4,400, 380 some people? Bye, sucker. We're downsizing for maximum profitability because some of our executives want to be billionaires before they hit 50. Mm-hmm. What about your mortgage, sucker? What about your 19 years of dedicated service, sucker? What about your savings, sucker? What about the college fund to get your children up out of your hellhole, sucker? What about your retirement, sucker? What about your medical expenses, sucker, that you can't afford anymore? See, those are things that we can have unity of purpose behind. What's supposed to happen that is not happening because we've let people through greed rip everybody off? What about the fact that so-called Obamacare was drafted by the senator from our state, Dr. Bill Frist, who is the heir apparent to the fortune from Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Blue, all this other stuff, most of these HMOs, and has control of these generic pharmaceuticals that, along with the medical insurance industry, are the real rippers, not big pharma. See, and we don't even realize that a conservative Republican who was Senate majority leader is responsible for it. He's not even what I call a good person behind civic responsibility or lack thereof. He bragged to me one time up at the Crescent Club that the first time he ever voted in his whole life, registered to vote, was when he decided to run for U.S. Senator. And he boasted that the only person he voted for was himself in the primary, and the only person in the main election was himself, and later boasted that the only person he'd ever voted for in life was himself. And that's senator from the state of Tennessee, Senate majority leader for the Republican Party, retired. And see, I'm an independent. I think both.
He's like a real narcissist, Dr. Frisk does. I mean, he's supposed to be about helping people. Well, it is what it
is. You see where this goes in Obamacare. Look what Obama did. He didn't do that. Frisk drafted it in 2003. He couldn't get it passed until 2010 when the Obama administration did. And were they being good to the people, or was it because his Indonesian trust fund, of which he was a 1/3 equal beneficiary, was a heavy investor in Blue Cross, also British Petroleum? And by the way, talking about people getting pardoned, Obama pardoned 26 BP executives who got indicted behind that Gulf oil blowout. That was before they even went to trial. He pardoned them because his trust fund was a big investor, and that was somebody that did a whole lot of joint ventures with late Daddy Sotoro.
I mean, like, it did so much. I mean, Obama was a disappointment. I ain't gonna lie. But also, I want to add with the Senator Joseph McCarthy. From my understanding, he was known to date the Kennedy sisters, and he was the godfather to Bobby Kennedy's first child, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, the former lieutenant governor of Maryland.
It's incestuous. Like, guess who was best man at Clarence Thomas's wedding?
Bush Jr.? Who? Don't say Obama,
Guess who
please.
Clarence Thomas was best man at the man's wedding?
Don't say no Joe Biden, please. I don't know. Who, Joe? You gotta tell me.
Had a radio show and a television show.
Not Larry Elder,
Very
right?
conservative.
Very, very Rush Limbaugh. That's right.
Now, was Rush Limbaugh a racist because he with a black best man at his wedding? Or was Clarence Thomas really far to the right because he had Rush Limbaugh as his best man?
I don't think Rush Limbaugh. I don't know if he hated black people. My thing is
No, he didn't.
racism.
I
Yeah,
actually talked to his brother
I mean he had respect. I
once
mean,
one time.
don't right wing guys got a lot of information, but sometimes they be getting their passions and their prejudice getting in the way. But they be having good information a
Well,
lot of
you know
times.
what they tend to be. It's
But
like Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch
mm-hmm,
was born late in his father's life.
mm-hmm,
His father was a big man with the print industry,
mm-hmm.
but he was a gadfly in English Parliament because guess what party he belonged to? The Labor Party.
Mm-hmm.
See, Fox is run by some people with a labor background. They just don't like all of this sissified stuff that the Democratic Party does. So they get confused from being with being arch conservatives and right wingers when what happens is the family is labor.
I mean, like what Hitler Party was, the Nazi Party was the Labor Party, right? They were the Democratic Party, right? The liberals.
The Nazi Party is an acronym
Of all
for the
people.
National Socialist German Workers' Party.
Mm-hmm. Labor.
Yes, but they wiped out the labor unions. That was a
Mm.
front.
Well,
They
Democrats
were
wiped out
very
the labor unions, right?
capitalist.
Too, right?
They were
Democrats got rid
very
of the labor unions.
capitalist. See, Hitler became one of the wealthiest men in Germany.
Mm-hmm. In the world, probably, right? Well, he was a billionaire. Will you say he was a billionaire or is over
Uh,
exaggerate?
Deutschmarks, I don't know, probably the equivalent since he'd get anything he wanted. He
And
had
we
that
like them over here, though.
huge spread up in the
But
Alps.
the Democrats loved the Nazis at the beginning. They loved Hitler. FDR
Well,
admired Hitler at first.
I had a Russian professor that I was teaching assistant for out at UCLA 50 plus
Uh-huh.
years ago. She was a good communist, a professor emeritus from the University of Moscow. She had been the highest ranking woman on the Soviet Politburo. At one point, she had
Mm-hmm.
just two people she answered to: Comrade Stalin, the premier of the Soviet Union, and
Mm-hmm.
Comrade Beria, who was chief of the secret police and managed all of those liquidations and then became premier when Stalin died for a short time before he got assassinated. She had been head of propaganda for the NKVD that became the KGB. Now, she's told me, she said, America is in danger of becoming a fascist country. It won't be from the jack-booted, goose-stepping right-wing type. It will
Right.
be from these hippies who will use fascist methodology to save you from yourself, who with good conscience will impose the worst fascist methodology. That's who you have to worry about. And look where we are. This country is becoming rapidly fascist. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram
Yeah.
are bastions of censorship and propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to go. What time is it? It's
Oh yeah.
2:40.
Yeah,
I
Jay, I
got to
want to
meet
ask you.
my niece for something. So
Oh
let's
yeah.
wrap this up.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I got to ask you before you go. This is important. Like the Malcolm X thing. Them two guys walking after they got exonerated. The alleged killers of Malcolm X, Khalil Islam, and Muhammad
Yeah,
Aziz.
I don't know. I have no idea whether that's justice or that's the fix. Why? Because doing what I did for 50 years, I know that very, very, very seldom does the media ever get close to what actually went on.
Mm-hmm. Because there's footage of Muhammad Aziz, somebody that looked like him from back in the day outside the Audubon. I'm not saying he did it, but it's
I don't
footage of
know.
a guy that looked like him outside the Audubon
I
that
don't
day.
know. See, it could be political.
Okay.
See, politics is about serious business. Politics keeps people from getting killed, or it causes people to be killed. Clausewitz, Prussian General Clausewitz, wrote Von Krieg, or On War. And he said, war is but the ultimate extension of the political process. War being primarily a political instrument, one should exhaust all nonviolent political instruments before one resorts to the instrumentality of war. Black folk, we need to understand that we're too much into our emotions, likes and dislikes. It ain't got nothing to do with like and dislike. It ain't got nothing to do with emotion. It's got to do with cold, rational, logical, reasonable, analytical manipulation, sometimes for the good of the people, oftentimes not. Now, if you want to see politics raw, go to the Memphis City Zoo and spend a week, couple hours a day for 5 days when you get a week off.
They're one of the best zoos in the country.
Yeah, and watch the chimpanzees or the baboons, and you will see raw politics. They do favors, they cut undercover deals, all kind. It's about power. But you know what? The primary point is that too many politicos and others forget. In their native habitat, when the shit hits the fan, guess who's supposed to be between the leopard and the rest of the pack or the troop? It's the leader. So you fight, put your life on the line, get in situations where your rivals may kill you or cripple you. And what you're trying to get? To be the first one between the danger and the people that are the group that you lead. Wow. That's a primate characteristic. In other words, I'm fighting you for the privilege and the honor of being the first to die. Ain't that a bitch?
Yeah.
By the way, look at the Kennedys. Joe Kennedy Jr. got blown up in an aviation accident. John F. almost lost his life when PG 109 got caught cut in two. An admiral wanted to court-martial him for losing his PT boat. Daddy intervened and got him a medal.
Hey, that's something.
George Herbert Walker Bush, youngest combat pilot in the U.S. military in World War II, got shot down in a torpedo bomber in the Pacific. See what I'm saying? Martin Luther King, peaceful man, got slain by probably some Marine Corps snipers. Malcolm X, a peaceful man, got slain. See how all of the white leaders are leaders because they deal with war?
Yeah.
Harry Truman, decorated as an artillery captain in World War I. Ike Eisenhower, commander of Allied Forces Europe. You know how many men he had under his command? The largest of any man in human history. He had 12 million Americans and 4 or 5 million Commonwealth and French soldiers. This man had 16 million troops under his direct command.
That's more than Napoleon or Julius Caesar by any chance? Or
oh, no way did they even come close. I mean, think of it, 16 million troops and you're their commander? Okay.
But he never had any wartime experience, though.
Washington, Lieutenant General Washington. The next Lieutenant General we had was Lieutenant General Ulysses Simpson Grant. That's 3 stars. He ultimately, as an honor, was promoted up to being the first 5-star general of the Army.
Mm-hmm.
We've only had 5 of those in American history. Grant, Sherman, Sheridan, Pershing, general of the armies. He's the
Yeah,
highest
exactly.
ranking.
Yeah.
MacArthur, Marshall, and Arnold. Now, you want to get something interesting? The highest rank you can get in the U.S. military is 4-star general. All Grant was during the Civil War was a 3-star lieutenant general.
Oh, that's not
All
hard.
George Washington was in the Revolutionary War was a 3-star lieutenant general. General Colin Powell had 4 stars. He was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's the same position, actually a higher position than 5-star General Marshall had as chief of staff of the U.S. Army. We don't give a brother his perks, And then the last person to have his second position was the founder of the Marshall Plan, Secretary of State, former General Marshall, Chairman, Chief of Staff, U.S. Army. Well, we had Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, Colin Powell. Okay, he relied upon that idiot George W. Bush as his commander-in-chief.
That undermined his
for
legacy, though.
misinformation,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a personal dishonor. It was just you got conned.
I mean, he was
And
a
by the
company
way,
man.
that was a true thing too. They showed it in that thing W, that movie W. General Powell threatened to kick Dick Cheney's ass physically in a White House conference.
That was an interesting movie. I enjoyed it.
Did you get George Herbert Walker Bush talking to his son W and said, "Son, I will beat your ass. Poppy, don't kick W's ass. I'm gonna kick his ass."
And he was a cheerleader in college, I think, right? George W.
But you see, his daddy graduated from Yale in 2.5 years. He was captain of the football team, captain of the baseball team, president of his frat, and president of Skull and Bones. They're not the same. See, also to show you something interesting, Bill Clinton was a member of the same frat as Prescott Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, and George Walker Bush, and also George Herbert Walker, whom was Uncle Herbie that George Herbert Walker Bush was named after, and George Walker Bush was named after. George Herbert Walker rechartered Halliburton in 1946 in Oklahoma. It had originally been chartered by the Bush family in 1919, but it became defunct. He revived it. Halliburton was trying to get pipeline rights in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Saddam Hussein signed a contract with the French and the Russians. So 2007, without bid, Halliburton took over the oil exploitation rights of Iraq, and last I checked, they were netting 2.3 million every 7 hours. How many times does 7 go into a year? 7 hours.
You had 7 hours into a year?
No. How many times does 7 hours go into a year? The 24 hours in a day has roughly 3 point something every day, 365 a year, and you net $2.3 million every 7 hours just off of what you're doing in
Wow,
Iraq.
that's a lot of yeah, geez.
Yeah, that's what George W. did for the Bush family and the Walker family.
Oh, so it's really about you know how people say about the FDR reason why one of the reasons
Yeah,
why the
and then
FDR fought.
also don't forget
Hmm.
there is Zapata and Zapata Offshore Oil. Zapata Offshore Oil was the holding company for all of the Bush family enterprises. When Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait, Zapata Offshore Oil was chartered in Kuwait. And when he nationalized everything, the Bush family was destitute. After Gulf War I, they were back in the goodies.
I mean, wars fought for profit. Like, you know, people were saying FDR fought World War II to get back control of the Golden Triangle for his family. Because his
Yeah,
grandfather made the family money through drug dealing and selling opium to the
yeah.
Chinese.
And
I mean, it's all
the
about profit.
great
It's never about
uncle was
morality, though.
a
It's not about morality.
unredeemed Southerner who tried to do all of the arms transactions for the South in Europe during the Civil War. He refused to take the oath of allegiance after the Civil War and snuck back in and out of the
Yeah, that
U.S.,
was
where
now
he
that was
was a
Teddy
wanted
Roosevelt,
man,
uncle. Yeah,
to
yeah.
visit Teddy Roosevelt, who was the teddy bear man, who was one of the worst racists in American history.
It's something weird about Teddy. He's very. It's something. It's like complex with his legacy. It's weird, but
Yeah, well,
black
look
folks
at
always
this.
saved his
Barack
ass, though.
Obama's adoptive daddy, Lolo Sotoro, did a lot of joint ventures with the Bush family and with Herbert Walker
Right.
and British Petroleum.
Mm. Well, Judge, I want to, man, you just got so much information.
And
And so
by the
we can,
way, you see when George W. Bush would feed Michelle candy,
hmm
the
at
inside
those
joke
state
was,
funerals.
yeah, but the inside joke was that was the same kind of candy that W used to give her husband, Barack, when he was Barry Soetoro, and the Bushes and the Soetoros used to hang together.
Hmm. Ain't that, it's all in the same game,
Ain't that a
Judge.
bitch?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something. It makes sense now in hindsight because, like you said, he exonerated on BP executives. Nobody from Wall Street ever went to jail for stealing from the people. No, nothing ever happened on Obama. Gitmo was never closed. Nothing never happened
And
under
his
Obama that
daddy
benefit the people.
used to run the death squads for the Indonesian government and do assassinations for the American CIA. See, back in the late 60s, allegedly there was a warrant outstanding for crimes against humanity against Obama's daddy, well, adopted daddy. That was
Hmm.
for killing, being responsible. It was from The Hague. It was for being responsible for killing more than 500,000 Indonesians during their civil war. See, he ran the death squads. He also was international vice president for Standard Oil. They were trying to get into Indonesia because Indonesia may sit on top of the world's largest oil reserves. They couldn't do that, so they took their guy who ran the death squads, had plenty of muscle, who was their executive vice president, and they backed him, and he set up his own oil company. Now, why did the U.S. interfere on his behalf? Well, for the CIA, you have a connection. Grandmama, who dispensed the money through that Hawaiian bank, she was a vice president for in the Southwest Pacific for the CIA.
Hmm.
She hooked Obama's mama up with Lolo Sotoro. Why? Because for the CIA, Lolo Sotoro ran the intelligence operations in China, the People's Republic, ran the American intelligence operations in North Korea, Cambodia, Laos. Remember, the Nam is going on in North Vietnam and in Indonesia, which was listed as a communist country when Lolo adopted Barack. And when Lolo died, he was one of the 10, 15 richest men on the planet Earth.
Wow.
See, so Barack Obama in 2018 was reported by Business Insider of having a net income of $570 million after all expenses in taxes, and that was on an alleged draw against his trust fund for the first time of $1.25 billion. And it's an Indonesian trust fund, so it's not subject to American taxation and laws.
That's something, Judge. Judge, I ain't gonna keep you
See,
too long. I know you said, yeah,
well, I
it's
gotta get
something.
ready. I gotta meet my niece.
Yeah, I do. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Judge. Especially to kick off the holiday seasons. I wish you safe travels and warm wishes for whatever got going
Well,
on. Enjoy yourself.
I don't know what I'm going to do. It depends on who's in town.
Yes, sir.
But let's see. Enjoy your birthday. Have fun with your friends and relatives. Be cautious. It's a good way to spread COVID-19. And by the way, Shelby County has a problem.
Okay.
Fish and Game have found that our deer population is massively infected with
Oh,
SARS-CoV-2.
gee.
That's COVID-19.
Mm. Wow.
You may have one running around in your backyard like I do. I got a whole bunch of deer hanging in the backyard.
I
They
guess
eat
that's
up all my
Bambi's
flowers.
revenge. Bambi's revenge or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, anyway, I buy and gotta go. This has been Joe. Catch me when you can. I'm gonna be the one that has to jump up and get on up, and I will have been the one that ran.
Thank you,
Now,
Judge. And I'm gonna use
Mayor
that
of
barbecue
Memphis,
sauce.
we will get free in 2023. We will make it what it ought to be in Memphis, Tennessee. And if you want some of the best damn barbecue sauce you can get in Memphis, Tennessee, which is known for barbecue,
Yes, sir.
Judge Joe Brown Barbecue. JJB, Judge Joe Brown Barbecue, BBQ, JJBBBQ.com, and order some. And it will
Yes,
be
sir.
in some of your local stores in a few months, and you can order all you want online. There will be seasoning, various types of sausage, chicken links. We're coming up with some of these Beyond Beef veggie links, and we have instructions on how to do Q and recipes for a whole bunch of stuff and instructional video, and it's some good stuff, man. We've got regular, OG, and hot.
Mm.
Now, get you some JJB BBQ and help out the judge. I won't turn my nose up at the nickels, dimes, and dollars. Promise I won't.
Thank you, Judge. And the words great to Gilton. We love you madly. You keep on producing and pushing.
Man up. When you man up, promote manhood, protect womanhood, lead and listen to advisement from your lady. Find one with some good sense. And ladies, men are not your enemies.
That's right.
And guys, a good woman can improve your health. And there is great truth behind this thing. Behind every successful man is a successful woman.
Mm.
They help. Now,
Sure
I'm out
do.
of here.
Yes, sir, Judge. God bless.
All right.
Yes, thank you. And that's the one and only Judge Joe Brown. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. I want to thank the moderators. We love you madly. And the donators that donate through the super chat and also through the Cash App and other means. We love you madly. And also the people that had questions about certain things that brother Chuck out in the West Side, I'm going to get him on and we're going to talk about the dating game with Judge next time. The dating game, dating apps and stuff like that. But I'm glad y'all hanged out and appreciate the love and the support because we all be in it to win it. And let me read a disclaimer before I get out of here because I believe in freedom of expression and freedom of speech. To hell with censorship, but this is my disclaimer. The views expressed by hosts and guests on the We All Be TV platform are not the official views, opinions, beliefs, or perspectives of We All Be News or the We All Be Group Incorporated. We All Be News is an organization that thoroughly believes in supplementing the information narrative that is usually supplied by the corporate news entities with those viewpoints and expressions which may be marginalized or ignored for a plethora of reasons. We are about informing the general public on alternative perspectives as it relates to news and information, and letting the general public be the ultimate judge in deciding on how to use said information. Informed citizens are responsible citizens. Thank you for your support. And I want to thank y'all once again. How can y'all support Brother Hurd and We All Be Movement? You can cash out your support, $ R2C2H2, PayPal, Google Pay your support, as well as Zelle your support at the email address R2C2H2 at gmail.com. Also, Vimo your support at R2C2H2. And you can buy Art of His Art to Wear. Go below the description box to this Teespring shelf and access all the wonderful art there. Also go to r2c2h2.com to also check out art there as well. So until the next time, it's going to be sooner than later. But thank y'all for being appreciative and not really haters. Even though my haters are some of my greatest fans as well. We love you, Matt Lee, too. So y'all take care of yourselves. Do things in moderation. Be safe. Be loving and also lovable, and know that the best is yet to come. Thank you so much, everybody. We all be in it to win it, and we love you all madly.